Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, April 27th meeting of the Finance Committee. Pursuant to the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 20, as well as the Select Board's emergency order dated March 16th, 2020, the Finance Committee will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the town's webpage within 24 hours in accordance with the Governor's emergency action requirement, keeping the public informed of actions during this meeting. I would ask that all participants remotely attending this meeting please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting. At this time, I will take a roll call of attendance. Ms. Zemer.
Here.
Mr. Alfred.
Here.
Mr. Maxwell.
Here.
Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
And of course, I am here, and Ms. Nersessian is going to be here. She just said she was going to be a few minutes late. She was running late. So I expect to see her shortly. Okay, so first up on the minutes side, I did not get a chance to go through the minutes because of all the stuff, getting everything ready for our report. So I will try to take care of that between now and next Tuesday. And Ms. Nersessian, are you here? Just say yes.
Yes. Sorry about being late.
Mark. Just so we have you officially roll called in. Okay. But so we'll deal with the minutes aspect next meeting. We'll catch up on the I think we're behind by like 2 or 3 meetings at this point. 3, yeah, okay. We have a couple of things I want to accomplish today. Basically, if you look at our agenda, which I didn't pull up yet. No, I actually did pull it up. Okay. We'll get the updates from Travis, but then we're going to primarily focus on our item 5, which is our traditional, getting the budget ready, because I don't think there's much else to talk about. But anyway, Travis, we'll start with you. Any updates you have on your side that you want to share with the committee?
No, I think after town meeting will be a good time. We can bring back an update on all the capital projects. The floors upstairs, the doors in the front of the building are done now. So I have some visuals, but there's a lot for you to do tonight. So I think we can plan that for a time that works for the committee after the town meeting. The only thing I would point out is the LRRP grant program, or the rapid response planning program through the downtown initiative is wrapping up the data collection phase and should have a report to us relatively soon. They did provide to us the data from the business survey. So I just got that today. I should be making that available for the community to look at soon, but that should also be driving some of the feedback we get from that. So I'll probably be sharing that with the Finance Committee as a whole soon, but hopefully, we'll get some good recommendations from that program that may align also with ARPA, which has a lot of economic development components to it. Other than that, I think everything that I have to talk about will be in the budget or warrant. Okay, and we'll move on from there. Okay, liaison updates. I don't certainly have any. Obviously, everybody knows what's going on with the schools. We haven't had a meeting with them recently because they're still working on the contract. I don't know if anybody else has any other updates, but at this point, I don't think there's much to report with. Okay, I don't see anybody clamoring to talk, so we'll move on from that. Chief Cassidy, you want to give us the update pandemic-wise?
Thank you, Chief Cassidy. In terms of the update from a financial perspective, since your last meeting, we have 9 additional expenses that have been posted to Munis. The majority of those were cleaning and sanitizing of municipal buildings, and that was roughly $6,800. There were no new CARES requests that came to the board on Monday night, so we continue to forge ahead as we have for the last couple months.
Okay, good. And town-wise, just, as I said, I know it's not financial, but we always ask, how are we doing town-wise?
Our positivity rate is hovering right around the states. For a few weeks, we were higher, then we were lower. This past week, we were higher again. And we continue to see, on average, roughly 32 to 35 new cases over the course of 2 weeks. So it's we're remaining pretty steady.
Okay, and how did the clinic, right? The vaccination clinic started last weekend, or is starting?
This is week 3 of the regional collaborative, and the first 2 weeks we gave out all 1,500 of our allocation from the state. So we more than met the state requirement of at least 85% administration. And we continue to have high throughput. And if you know anybody that needs a dose, we've still got spaces available on our private link.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was asking about that more as a public service to make sure people knew that was out there.
Sure.
Anybody who's watching it hasn't gotten their shot yet or shots, you have plenty of opportunities to do that now. So,
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, so let's get right into budget stuff. As you recall, last Thursday, we voted recommendations for every budget except for the assessors. That was just pending some clarification of information that was wanted by Mr. Alford in particular, wanted to follow up on a couple of things. I will add to that we had the discussion last week about the Board of Health and the position adjustment and the town clerk's position, position adjustment. Travis, and I'm sure he can chime in on that later if necessary, but he got some updated numbers. So he's asking that we revote our recommendations for the Board of Health and the town clerk's budget, basically to redistribute some of the money to align it with the way it's actually going to be spent. And that has a very minor change to the bottom line. But so from my perspective, we have 3 budgets to vote, and then we can dive into the warrant. So Dan, you have your hand up. You can comment first. We'll to tackle the assessor's issue.
Well, since I seem to have had the biggest issue last week, I guess I go first, and obviously others should feel free to chime in. But I've been thinking about this a lot, and I still have absolutely no idea exactly why the need for the $20,000 is there. I mean, I understand the request, but I can't make the numbers tie. That said, it seems like Travis believes that it's very important, and talking with him and trying to rely on his expertise is important, and so I'm ready to support the request. And then hopefully we can just, stay on tabs with it to see how it goes. But again, I still can't make heads or tails of the numbers, and it doesn't completely, jive with me. But it's not worth the continued consternation, especially given the support of the town administrator. Okay. So if that's the case, and if anybody else has any issues on the assessor's budget, raise your hands now. Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
One point. I think one of the things from last week, I would say it would be a relatively good comparison is, the idea that for Parks and Rec, we sort of said it's important, so we'll leave it in the budget, but if we're able to accomplish that work through ARPA, then we won't spend it. We'll keep an eye on that and look at it. One of the things that I still need to do more work on, as it's been brought to our attention that some other towns have accomplished some of the work that overlaps with what the assessors are asking for through CARES. Now, I've also heard a lot of what other towns have done through CARES that I don't always agree with. So again, I think in the same vein, I think we could do something similar, which is to say it is, I believe, in our best interest to have the request that the Board of Assessors made in the budget. But I will continue to work with Kathy Pierce to determine if any of that work can be accomplished through CARES or ARPA, and therefore not hit the tax levy and be turned back at the end of the year, or potentially adjusted as early as the October town meeting. If that, I think because we just had that conversation last week, it might be applicable here as well.
Okay. Sue, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So Travis, I was going to echo that. I mean, I think what we heard last week was this is a catch up, is needed for a catch up because people couldn't get out. Although I'm not entirely sure why someone couldn't get out. I know they couldn't get in, right, to people's homes. I understand that, but at least the perimeter could be looked at. But it would be good to, I think it would be very helpful to try to get the reimbursement to the extent that we can. The other thing I think I'd like to see, and maybe we have that, Mary may know, just the tracking of how many of them are done and in what time period. I think that would be just helpful going forward. I think, to Dan's point, in terms of being able to get there on any of the financial information, I think it's helpful to have that type of data. And I emailed Mary, but not until tonight, but just the percentage of homes that you get into versus not, because obviously it takes more time if you're inside versus if you're just outside. It's also, I presume it's quicker. So that would be a go forward, just request.
Okay, and one other thing I will add that I don't think the point was made last week, right? There's no legal requirement to let the assessor come into your house, but there are rules that, the way I would say it is it favors letting them in. In other words, they can make judicious assumptions, and that's intentional, right? Because the idea is that they want to get a fair assessment, and if you're not going to let them have access to the property to make a fair assessment, they have the legal right to kind of, assume kind of best case scenarios for the interior. And so that's why I said a lot of times, so again, I don't know the data of how many people say no, how many people, but I do think that it's not the case, and I don't want to put it out there that somehow there's generally a disadvantage to not letting them in from your assessment point of view, put it that way. So anyway, okay, so if there are no further questions on that one, if everybody's fine with the number, then I will entertain a motion to recommend a budget of $260,680 for the Board of Assessors for FY22.
So moved, Vincent Murphy saying.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, let's proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. Okay, that's that. And the only reason, in case before you guys ask why we didn't do it in bulk, is because we have to vote to reconsider the other two and so forth. So I had to do this one separately. So what I would recommend for the other two is that we vote to reconsider our recommendations for the town clerk and the Board of Health budgets for FY22.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. So you got that, Tim? Okay. So then again, that requires another roll call vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so that means that we now are reconsidering those two departments. And Travis, do you want to give the quick explanation of the adjustments?
Sure. So I had done the analysis on 24 hours and 24 hours for the two assistants in or administrative support staff for the BOH, with the discussion that there would also be specific hours to the building inspector. That's a separate budget, and then any hours for Board of Health above those 24 hours and 24 hours would be CARES or ARPA dependent. That calculation comes to 66,000. And what we voted last week, because of the adjustment that we were making, sort of taking out a chunk, ended up at 70,000. So in reality, the Board of Health, with the calculation that we had, that we all agreed to, which I've after last week, resent to the Board of Health to make sure everybody's comfortable with the outcome, and they are. The actual outcome of the clerical staff line is 66,000 instead of 70, and I'll give you the exact number. On the opposite end, and these were a number of sort of final checks between myself and Sharon Emmerich, was that the number that I had assumed in the clerk's adjustment was done prior to the decision of the COLA for FY22. So the numbers that I was carrying needed to be adjusted for that. And then that one is a little bit more complicated in the fact that there's actually four moving components: the clerk's office, the town administrator's office, also some support for the elections budget and for the FinCom budget, in that the position is posted to do your minutes. All of that to be stated, that one actually needed to come up slightly because of the COLA adjustment. The net impact of Board of Health goes down about 4,000. The net impact of the clerk goes up about 3,000 for a negative impact of the bottom line of about $1,000. So I can show those if you'd like for what Sharon sent earlier.
I don't know. I've seen them. I don't know if anybody cares that much about the slight delta. If anybody wants to see them, just let me know. I have the new numbers, and I'll tell the committee what the new numbers are, and then you can decide whether you want to see the detail. The new numbers are town clerk would be 173,810 from 170,768, and the Board of Health would be 168,600 from 173,229. So that's the net impact, right? One goes up, one goes down. So if anybody wants to see the detail, it's just salary change adjustments. So.
And I'd love to see that. It's more for record purposes than anything.
Yep, that's good. Go ahead, Travis, you can share those budgets.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just meant in time. I didn't need to see it right this second.
No, that's okay. It never hurts. Anybody who's watching might want to see it too. So.
All right. So sorry, I'm pulling it up through the email that Sharon sent to the chair earlier. So this is the adjusted amount of 27,000. This was the amount that changes. The bottom line becomes 173,810. Let me just see. Can I just skip to the next one? Yes, I can. And then the Board of Health, as I said, the number that we voted last week included 70,000 here for clerical salaries, but it's actually 66,048. Bottom line, it becomes 168,600. Again, the two of those combined net out to decrease the bottom line of the budget. And I can send these to you, Mark, for your minutes.
Yeah.
Which may be being done by a new clerical person who is being interviewed in the next couple of weeks.
The stupid procedural question again. The budget that is our $1,500, so to speak, can that be used for this position as
yes,
well?
that's what it is. The $1,500, just to be clear, in case you've never looked at our budget, which is very, very complex. I mean, this is why I have multiple degrees. It has two lines. One is for the minutes and one is for our membership in the Mass Association of Finance Committees. The MAFC piece is $210. We already approved that for this year to spend that. The rest is all minutes and a little bit of preparation stuff, but it's, printing costs and some of that. But since we largely don't print the report anymore, it's predominantly that. And that's why, because we haven't had that function covered for quite some time, that's one of the reasons why, if you look at our actual expenditures for the last several years, it's been just, $200-300 out of that $1,500. So. Okay, so yes, it is exactly what our budget is for the minutes and for the membership. So, okay, so if nobody has any objections to those two numbers, then what I would say is I'd entertain a motion to recommend that we recommend the amount of $173,810 for the town clerk's budget and $168,600 for the Board of Health budget for FY22.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on those two recommendations? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Ms. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, congratulations, Finance Committee. We have a budget for FY22. Okay, for FY22, and now comes the fun part. So now let's move on to the warrant. We got the final, we got the warrant from Travis yesterday. Let me pull it. And I don't know, do you want me to share it? Do you want to share it? I mean, I guess I can share it. It doesn't really matter. Actually, no, go ahead, Travis, you share it because I'm going to keep track of some of these things. So I'm going to be shuffling windows so this way it won't get blocked.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up. I'll show the world how I pull it up for anybody wanting to watch at home. You go to our website, which I assume everybody can see this.
Mm-hmm.
Town links, town meeting. You can look at all the previous ones. So it usually goes warrant, then FinCom report. So right now there's no FinCom report yet. So the only thing there is the warrant. Table of contents. And if we don't get it all done on Monday, we got 3 other days, although I have my second shot on one of these days, so let's not go 3 nights, please. There you go.
Well, you're incentivized to make sure we move quickly, right? So, okay, so what I would suggest, since we have to take roll call votes on everything, let's take a first walk through the warrant and look at what we think we're going to want to, we have a consensus on favorable action for, and then we'll take one motion to recommend favorable action on a bunch of articles at one shot. So with that, let's go through a quick, okay, obviously, I don't think we usually weigh in on Article 1, but obviously Article 2, I assume we're going to have favorable action on our own report. So let me just keep my notes here. Okay, 3 is the foreclosed tax title properties. That's routine to allow us to dispose of anything we acquire through tax title. Anybody have any objection? And what I'll say is if you have an objection, either speak up or raise your hand or something. Since I can't see all of you while he's sharing, I can't see the entire committee. So make sure you either say something or raise your hand in Zoom so that I know if you have an objection. Okay, so 3, I don't see any problem with. 4 is the compensation.
Let's circle back to 4, and just not because I'm going to oppose it, but because I want to have a less.
We need to have debate on that.
I don't want to have a boilerplate recommendation on that.
Okay. So we'll keep 4 out. I'll put that separate. Okay. Keep going. So 5 is the unpaid bills. And right now we have, $185 of bills.
Yeah, so I caught these when we were going through that whole exercise previously. And so we wrapped up everything, but I can't pay these bills without town meeting approval.
Yep. Now are these would be FY20 bills, right?
Yes.
Wow. These really are late. Okay. So everybody good with that?
Well,
So-
maybe we should hold off and not pay it at all, you know?
That's right. Well, actually,
But
so is the plan, so Travis, you want to raise and appropriate the 180 whatever for that?
We could raise and appropriate. We can do it from reserve. The motion can be written whatever we think is best. Again, I mean, it's under $200. It's not going to be an issue, but I would probably not raise and appropriate just because of the implications for the tax rate setting next year. Okay.
So, but that one's going to require a separate motion of then favorable action. So we'll have to pull that one aside. Okay. So let's go to Article 6, the transfers. That also is not going to be a favorable action one because we're going to have a recommendation that's going to include the transfers. So we'll skip that one. 2. Okay. Keep going, Travis.
I'm sorry, what was the issue with 6?
Well, 6 is not just going to be a favorable action. That's going to have to be a recommendation on how we fund it, right? Or we're going to have to recommend the transfer. So that's why I said it's a more detailed recommendation. Okay. 7. Okay. So the first question I'd have on 7 and I presume 8, which is the wage table, right? Okay. Is one of the things that we have done. Scroll down a little bit on the compensation plan. Let me see what. Okay. So this is. So you put this all on 7, or is this?
This is all in 7.
Okay. So this is just the grading. Okay, keep going for a second. I just want to see, this is all the tables. Okay, keep going through the tables. I want to see what Article 8 says.
All right, so this is the comment right here on Article 7, which is I just tried to highlight any change made from prior year. So for example,
The one thing I would suggest, and again, this can be in our report, doesn't have to be, obviously can't be in the warrant at this point, is that we generally, and this is mostly for the future because we can't touch the warrant at this point, is generally speaking, a lot of town meetings, people will say, well, what's the difference in this table versus last year? And so you spelled some of that out here, but what you didn't spell out was that it represents a 2% COLA. I didn't see that. I don't know if you have it anywhere else, but I mean, typically what we do at the very beginning at the top there when we have the wage tables is we say, you talk about the deltas and you say all amounts reflect a 2% COLA adjustment from FY21. Mm-hmm. So just again, so people don't have to go there and try to figure out. And this is 7. So 7 is okay because that's just a favorable action one. Okay. So let's look at 8.
I was just one thing I would say about 7, if I could, just not that we're going to change anything. I still think that having the M5 and M6 max step the same is, just ridiculous, but that's just a comment.
I'm interested to have the new M4 ATA/HR director weigh in on the M schedule in general. And I think that's something that at least by the time we're at next May, we'd want that HR professional to be prepared to speak to in depth.
Yeah, I'm just saying on its face, it just doesn't make any sense. But, anyway, I'm not holding things up. Moving on.
Okay, so 8 is the personnel bylaw. And what are we doing here? Okay, this is just, okay. Okay, so that just basically shuts off accruing time off when people are gone. So
Do we know, Travis, do you have a sense of what the savings would be for the town?
It's not common scenarios, but what it's essentially saying is when we have somebody out on long term, there's a number of ways in which those people get captured. We have long-term disability and things that people can opt into. But one of the things that we want to make sure is if somebody's out for more than 2 contiguous months, that the issue is that they're not still accruing. This is something that was sort of, in a common review of our consolidated personnel bylaw, was brought up by Labor Council. This is a pretty standard fix that we think belongs in there. And then the other one is, the 90-day probationary period. Generally speaking, we'll have somebody in for 3 months before we determine that we want them for the long run. Generally speaking, it also triggers the first step. Let's say we bring them in, make sure that they're fitting, and then they get a step increase after 90 days. This allows for a longer period for the town to evaluate, and it matches up more with the CBAs that we have elsewhere, so that it's more standard across the organization.
Okay. I'm presuming we've had people take advantage of 8 before, so I just wasn't sure. Like, it might be worth, I don't know if anybody else would ask, but just in terms of the costs that could run up on something like this might be helpful, but not for today, obviously.
Okay.
Okay, so 9 and 10 we'll consider separately because we have to have a separate discussion about that. Those are the governance committee articles. So you can scroll by those. Okay, 11, I saw this one when you got the draft, and I don't know whether we even weigh in on this, right? There's no financial implication to any of this. But the one thing I was wondering was how that works. And the reason I say that is because it has to be done very carefully. And that's the only concern. Look, I think this is totally fine for the town clerk to be able to, reorganize the bylaws. But given that there are references in there, in one section to other sections, right? What happens if there's a renumbering and that's missed, let's say, and then now you've got something pointing to a section that's not applicable or something, that's the only concern I have. And as I said, I don't think it's a big concern, but one of the big complaints I've had about our bylaws is that we don't have a good online version, right? We have a scanned PDF that Chris just this year made searchable, right? But we don't have, as far as I know, I don't think we have the bylaws in like a Word format where you can put in the references and have them automatically updated. And that may be, again, I'm not opposed to this, but I'm just saying, to me, that's step one of this process, right? Is put something in that has the cross references in it so that when you make these changes, either the references are automatically updated or it flags that you've created a dangling reference or you might have created some situation like that.
Well,
So,
is it the town clerk's, would the town clerk normally do this, or would someone in a legal position actually do this?
You want to weigh in on that?
not me. I wouldn't know, right?
Okay,
That's not a financial issue.
Yeah, so generally speaking, for the standard issues here, especially the non-substantive, right, which is what this is touching on, can be done by the clerk's office. We do have it in a format because it needs to be updated from time to time. And I think the example I put in here in the comment is the one that really triggered this idea, which is at the end of the July annual town meeting, there was a citizen's petition, which ended up needing to go to the AG's office to make sure that it was legal and should be put in the bylaws and it's binding. And we got feedback from the AG before putting it in. But at the end of the day, it touches on the animal control officer, and it would be better if it could be placed with other articles in the bylaws that sort of interact with it. But the town clerk can't do that. So this would essentially allow the clerk's office to place articles more appropriately where they belong for a document that is to the chair's point, more readable. Not that bylaws are ever going to be all that readable, but at least for flow. And then, yes, if there were instances that were certainly more complicated, the clerk would then rely on town council to make sure that everything, reviewing before changes are made and made permanent.
The only thing is who decides if something's not substantive or not? And I guess will town council review it after? Because I have to tell you, like, sometimes you don't know if there's an impact in other areas without sort of really having a thorough understanding of the bylaws and the requirements around them. And this is no disrespect at all to having Liz do this. I do think that there should be some sort of a review after. It should be in track changes, and then someone in a legal position should actually be reviewing it.
No, I don't think that's a problem. I agree.
And the other question I have is, how are these changes on those particular things going to be tracked? In other words, again, this is not a financial issue. It's just this, I'm just asking this more as a citizen, right? So you have this renumbering, I get, but where it says non-substantive changes, like, let's say, again, this gets to Sue's point about legal review, right? If they change a word and changing a word from, one to the other could somehow legally change its meaning, right? And let's say this change is made according to this because this passes and the town says, okay, you can do this, right? And then there's an issue, let's say 5 years later, about the bylaw, and somebody comes in and says, well, this is what the bylaw says. And then nobody is aware that the wording was changed by the town clerk. In other words, like, to me, there should be some requirement that any changes that are made are noted somewhere, that the changes that are made outside of town meeting are noted somewhere in case there ever is a legal dispute down the road, to say that this was a change made by the town clerk, not by the town. Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't know if it's too late to change the wording of the warrant article, but maybe it should be, how, I hate to bring up the governance committee, but you know how they've changed they've actually noted where it's changing the bylaw. Maybe warrant articles, even though I guess you can't change the wording of a warrant article, maybe there should be a note saying, because it's really only a problem with warrant articles, because if the select board or someone else is making a change, like planning board is making a change, it always says what it's replacing. So it's really only a problem with petition articles. Maybe someone can make a note saying this will be placed following this section, or, so when town meeting votes, they know where it's going to go before it goes there.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I know what Travis is going to think. It's like, Jesus, man, don't make this a big pain in the ass, right?
Because it really is only petition articles. If it's zoning or if it's anything else, we know where it's going to go before town meeting votes.
Right. Well, that certainly helps. I think that having that kind of advice for petition articles would be helpful. But as I said, I think that my only concern with any of this would be, if the town under the, again, if this were not to exist, any bylaw changes have to go through town meeting. Every town meeting has minutes. Every town meeting has a record, right? My only concern is if something gets changed in a way that has a ripple effect. And again, let's say Liz changes it, and then 5 years later, she's not the town clerk, nobody's around, nobody remember, right? And it's just in our bylaws this way. That's what I'm concerned about, is there should be some record of the changes that were made, because right now the record is the town meeting minutes that records every change. So, and again, I'm not trying to complicate the process, but I'm saying that
clerk is the one doing the minutes of town meeting, right? So the clerk has the minutes of town meeting. The clerk can, when they update these versions, the clerk is the one updating this bylaw, right? Putting in the bylaw based on the AG's feedback, town council review from the July meeting, right? So that is the person then who's tracking the changes that they made in this version that becomes the new version of the bylaws, and can also sort of indicate what changed from the previous version to this version. I don't see that as a problem. I see that as just sort of part of this process. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying I see that as being very accomplishable.
Yeah, and that's my point. Is that I just would I would feel more comfortable if I had something that said there's a record kept of all these things that are changed outside of town meeting, just in the event of as I said, for the sole purpose of protecting the town in the case of a bylaw dispute. Mr. Alfred, go ahead.
I will first of all point out that we will still have the old version of the bylaw, right? It's in a PDF now. Then if things are really kind of funky, you can go back and look at it and see if that, if
Well, that may or may not be true, right? I mean, yes, theoretically we have it, but there's no requirement that we keep it, right?
Okay, so let's just, we'll keep it. It's a PDF, right? Anyway,
And that's why I said I think it's an easy problem to solve. Just
so I don't necessarily have an issue with this, but I guess my question would be, how confident is Liz that she can get this done in her office without needing additional hours? Because you note that it says, or an agent, the town clerk or an agent designated by the town clerk shall be authorized to do all this work. So, I mean, are we sure that we're not going to need to either hire somebody extra to fill in backfill hours? Because this seems like a pretty large undertaking that, is not normally done in the clerk's office. So, I mean, is this really a non-monetary thing, or is it something where there's going to be a request coming at some point for additional hours or contract work or something like that?
actually, I'm sorry to interject, Dan, but I just did notice that it does say editorial revisions will be identified by footnote or other convention. So it does have a provision in there that whatever she changes will be noted.
And we have a flat fee for MTC, so that's where that's who will be covering any costs that are needing to be done outside of the clerk's office. Would be my answer on cost. I would intend to Sue's point earlier, for anything that if there's any question or complication to be reviewed by town council, and that the versions that change over time, not only to the point of having the PDF of the previous version, but we have we are a municipal government. We have many printed versions of these things as well, and they're all kept, some by law, some by just our filing system. So I think in terms of the electronic copy, hard copy, Tallerman MTC, review with a flat fee. I think we're covered here. Looking at it.
Okay, so no additional money requests. So then we don't have to vote on it.
Yes, well, look on the bright side. Travis didn't ask for a $20,000 study to see whether we should have a renumbering of our bylaws.
You can't get a $20,000 study. They start at 40.
That's right. Okay. So, okay. Any other questions on 11? Okay. So I'll put that in the list of things I think we'll go for, even though, as I said, I don't know if we weigh in on that one. Okay. Surplus equipment. That's boilerplate. Chapter 90 is boilerplate. So that's 12, 13. Okay. Okay. 14 is the interest rate. We've done all that. Okay. Now there was one. Okay. Is this? Okay. So 14 and 15 are the standard two that we've approved every year since the cows came home, to just adopt. Okay. So 14 and 15. Okay. So 16, this is, now I know that a couple of years ago, there was a discussion and approval of certain exemptions. Is this a redo or a rewrite of that particular thing, Travis? Do you happen to know?
This is adding 22G and H to what the town had previously adopted through the Brave Act. So changes, the town is now adopting 22G and 22H, and then the other change that's in here is changing from having a veteran must be domiciled in the state of Massachusetts for 6 consecutive months. It's reducing it from 2 years to 1 year, and changing essentially how long the veteran has to be in the state of Massachusetts to qualify. So this is new in that it's adopting G and H, all part of the Brave Act, as changed in August 28th, 2018.
Okay, so how much is this going to cost us? And I know that the answer is going to be initially nothing, but it really does cost the rest of the taxpayers because they have to shoulder this burden, right? So, do we have any estimate as to what this is going to cost? How many people might be eligible for this, what their assessment, what their taxes are? I mean, not the individual taxes, the aggregate of the tax that might be subject to this.
I believe when it relates to the specific, I'm just try to find the wording here. There was one individual who qualified under one of them. Neither of these are very widespread uses. It's A, B, C, D. 22 A, B, C, D, E, F are much more common. G and H are less common. I believe Sarah Bateman identified at least one person, one family or household that will fall under, I want to say it was 22H. So no, it is not a widespread impact, and it is bringing in G and H into the fold of what the town had previously adopted, A through F. A through.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just, again, this obviously has a financial impact, and that's what I'm trying to make sure we understand. So it basically says if somebody meets these requirements, they are exempt from property tax. Right, that's the way I'm reading it, right? Provides for property tax exemption to the full amount of the taxable valuation.
That's correct.
Okay, so what does that do to, is it like the other exemptions, which basically say that that person who was subject to this provision doesn't pay tax on their property? How long does that stay in effect? Right, because I see the survivorship things here. I'm just trying to comprehend, even though it's a small amount. I'm like, okay, this is, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm just trying to understand what the impact is to the tax base. So somebody gets this exemption, and it says that if they meet the requirements, it has to be occupied by surviving parents or guardians. So does it literally continue for the life of the surviving parent or guardians? And then it goes back into effect whenever the property is sold, or I mean, that's, I guess what I'm just trying to understand how, when somebody gets an exemption.
It does not survive sale of the property, transferable, any of those things, right? So
okay.
It is relatively conservative in that. And, the surviving parents or guardians is defined in here. And loosening up slightly the time at which the person has to be domiciled in Massachusetts is going to have, I would say, I can't quantify that at all in terms of the 22. I'm trying to think if it's G or H and just reread these because they're all sort of interplayed here, but there's only one family in Holliston that fell into that category per Sarah Bateman the last time that she checked. Mm-hmm. And so, no, it is not a widespread impact, but I see some hands, so.
Okay, let's see if okay, Dan, you're first.
Yeah, so to be clear, this is, it's not removing, it's simply spreading out the cost over the rest of taxpayers, right?
Exactly.
Just like all the other ones. It's not actually reducing the amount. Okay. And it is a permanent reduction. So especially for a Gold Star.
So it's an elimination, right? It reduces the full value.
Elimination. So for a Gold Star family, I mean, it's indefinite as long as they own that property and are still alive, right? Is that
if the surviving parent or guardian of the Gold Star individual, yes, it would continue on with them. And then if they were to sell the house, it does not.
It's a small impact, and obviously they've given the greatest sacrifice. But is this something that most towns have adopted?
Yeah, this is one that Sarah Bateman essentially was saying that this we're not certainly the first. I don't believe we'll be the last in the state, but in the area, I think this could have been done last July, really anytime since 2018. And it's really bringing in, again, what the town has previously adopted in 22A through 22F, and it's adding the G and H and keeping us up to date with the Brave Act.
But most other towns have done this, or in this area.
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, look, it's not a big cost, and certainly doesn't even impact the budget per se, just impacts the taxpayer, how much taxpayers pay. But I think that if you asked anyone, they'd certainly be willing to pay for that. So,
That's why I said, okay, Michelle.
I just want to clarify that this isn't a lien on the property, right?
No.
It just disappears. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not in opposition to it. I'm just trying to understand, when you see a lot of these things that have all this language about survivability and everything, I just want to make sure we understand what the program's actually doing before we put our stamp on it. So.
Yeah, and so sorry, I was looking for very specifically the information, and I realized that they put it in the comments. So 22H allows the Gold Star parents to be exempt from tax rate to the chair's point, 100%. 22G allows the parent who is a caretaker, right? So it's specifically to this point. It is a parent who is a caretaker to a veteran. So it's not just simply the parent, right? You have to be deemed the caretaker to receive the exemption normally given to the veteran. And they must also file a fiduciary trust. So it's not overly broad once you drill down into it. These are relatively specific circumstances that, again, are not going to be widespread. The Gold Star is not necessarily common. Again, I believe one was the estimate that I got from the veterans agent. And then the parent must be deemed the caretaker of the veteran to be exempt for the same thing that would have normally been provided to the veteran, provided they file for the fiduciary trust.
Okay. As I said, I wasn't concerned about that as much as just making sure we understood what we were signing up for, right? There are a lot of things in state law that say, you adopt this provision and then you find out years later it has all these side effects you weren't aware of. So you feel obligated to make sure we understand those. So, okay. Any other discussion? And that was 16, right?
It was.
Yep. Okay. Spending limits. Are there any changes from last year in this one, Travis?
Sealer of weights and measures was increased from, I believe, 6,000 to 10,000 to purchase equipment specific to the work that they're doing. The increased workload of monitoring the marijuana cultivation facilities were discussed with the sealer, how to handle this. The revolving fund can certainly handle the 1 year increase. And he is going to look at how other communities are handling rates for those types of activities to make sure that that rate is, the cost of these types of things is covered through those enterprises and not spread to other people who require the sealer of weights and measures. And I reference that here in the comment.
Okay.
How many cultivation facilities do we have in town now? Not like in approved HCAs.
Approved HCA 6. I believe 4 of them are at a stage where the sealer is in needing to be checking on them and putting them on a schedule, and 4 of them have what would be called COs, which is the occupancy permit issued by the building inspector.
At some point, and I don't, whenever. Like I like. Do you have have you projected where you think things may go with them, or are you working on something like that? I didn't realize it was actually that many. I thought actually we were probably like 2 to 3. So, so I'd be curious just to sort of see if we start, projecting what the revenue is.
Yeah. So we have 2 obviously that have been paying the town under the old HCA format. We have 2 that have their COs that are going to be under the new HCA format, which is 3% of wholesale revenue. But all of the HCAs essentially say, once they start growing, and begin to be able to change hands with product, then it's 14 to 18 months after that, depending on the HCA. So we're still in a period right now, sort of the in-between period before we actually see the impact of what 3% of wholesale revenue is. So we're pretty early on, but yeah, I think we're at a stage where we need a little bit more info, and then we can have a full-scale discussion on projections of revenue.
And maybe at some point, actually, we can just put this on an agenda item because I don't want to have a long-term discussion about that. But how we do it, what kind of reporting we get from them, how we ensure that we're getting the right information from them. I'm sure there's some sort of standard and everything, but I'd just be curious to sort of have a little bit more deeper dive into understanding that.
So you're saying you want a pot meeting at some point?
Yeah, I want to dig deep into the weeds.
That's right. Get into the weeds on weeds, right? Okay. So any questions on 17? Anybody have any objections to that? As I said, if not, I'll put that in our potential favorable action list. Okay. 18. I think we're going to be a favorable action on 18. I hope. Okay. 19 is the 1.75 million. Again, I think we're okay on that. Although, okay, 19's got to be separate because we need a different thing on that. Okay. Okay. 20. 20's got to be separate also because it needs a different recommendation. Okay, CPC, same thing, so skip that one. Stabilization fund, so 22, we're not going to do anything at this town meeting. So, okay, 22.
So we would indefinitely postpone that to October, essentially.
Yep, that's what I just wrote down. Okay, 23.
Oh, I have one change here. I just wanted to go through.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, go through that.
So a lot of the discussion that we had was sort of making sure that that this pension stabilization fund can't be repurposed at a whim in the future. We discussed, before October bylaw and that type of information. So the one change that happened here from the last time we had this discussion, when we sort of, Mary Busquet and myself were crossing the T's and dotting the I's with council, PRIT, where we intend to invest these funds, and PARAC, who's the overseer of all things pension in Massachusetts, was that we changed this from section 5B as in boy to 5D as in David. 5D is a specific section within Chapter 40 that means that this stabilization fund can only be used for the purpose of pension. So in the future, if it were intended to use these dollars for a different purpose, you couldn't simply have a vote to change the purpose of the stabilization fund. You'd actually have to disband this stabilization fund under 5D. And if you wanted to do it for another stabilization fund, you'd have to create another stabilization fund under 5B. You couldn't just repurpose this for anything other than pension. So I think that, speaks to strengthening it to the way we had discussed, and was really, as we were making sure, just, finalizing our conversations with PRIT, PARAC, and council, that was a change that was made in the last 10 days.
So you could not take this money out to buy a fire engine or pay for operating budget of anything other than pension expenses? Is that what you're saying under 5D? The state statute does not allow that as long as you incorporate it like that?
Yes.
So essentially then the state has provided a mechanism that we don't need a bylaw. Is it kind of?
Yeah, I think, we can discuss between now and October, how we want to set up the funding so we can, essentially get credit for this from S&P and others to say, here's our plan with it. And if that's a policy document as opposed to a bylaw, that's, we can have that conversation. I think the protection that the Finance Committee was looking for and others were, interested in seeing here, when the conversation I had with the select board as well is, I think 5D as in David covers us for a lot of that. And now, we can sort of look at that we want a policy of how we're going to fund it over time, what instances we would consider using it, those types of things. And codifying, the intention to have it in PRIT other than just simply the comments here. We can have all those conversations still between now and October, but I think, the intention is that it will only be pension and not repurposed.
It sounds like it. I would like to see those documents. The only last question I have is, does it still require a 2/3 vote at town meeting to pull money out?
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
It does not?
It's a majority. I just pulled it up.
Okay, that may be something we want to talk about, whether we want to pass a bylaw to require it to be.
But it only can be used for retirement. I mean,
no, I understand, but
it's not the bylaw. Sorry, it's the law.
Right.
All right, so I got to pull this down so I can pull up 5D because 2/3 was, I don't know why that would change. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so Tim, do you have a question for Travis or is it just a general?
It was more for Travis. So I kind of did the same thing that Ben did, where I pulled up
5D just to kind of put my eyes on it. They use some language around like pension reserve fund instead of the language we're using. And as I keep reading down, there's some references to pursuant to subdivision G of section 22, chapter. It gets technical.
Legal, I think, is a term.
Are we going to run into any problems by having that kind of disharmonization where we're calling this a pension liability stabilization fund and they're referring to it slightly different? It also looks like 5D makes a reference to the aggregate amount in such fund shall not exceed 10% of the equalized valuation as defined.
Yeah. Equalized valuation of the town is a very, very high number that we don't have to worry about. The equalized valuation of the town is like 2.8 billion. So no,
Wait, are you implying we're not going to have $250 million in this fund?
It's possible. No, so let me look at why they would have made the change from two.
Then we would be stashing money.
Right.
But no, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the conversations that we're having with PRIT, right? The reason, and actually, if you look in the 5D, it specifically references the fact that it makes it eligible for PRIT. You know, we were going to be kind of trying to fit a round peg in a square hole for trying to get a stabilization fund into PRIT to begin with. So this, one of the reasons for 5D is to ensure that we have that option. If we did not have PRIT as an option, there are other alternatives like Bartholomew that we use for some funds that we could invest in as well. But that's really it. We want the option of PRIT. And so there is a little bit more language in here than it relates to a general stabilization fund. But the concerns that you were just raising about, you know, its role of the overall pension liability of the town and those types of things, none of the thresholds we're concerned about after review with town council.
Okay, Vin, you had a question?
No, I was just commenting the same thing, Tim.
Okay.
So.
I was going to say the one thing that I would say that this whole conversation was reminding me of is, you know, the only thing that I want to, and I think you've reassured me of this, but that I just wanted to mention is this, because this now is a pension reserve, so to speak, under the law, if we do it as 5D, are there gotchas with regard to mandatory funding? And the only reason I'm saying this is because one of the reasons we separated our OPEB fund as a special law was because of what 32B has done to us on the benefit side, right? You know, we go back 50 years or 60 years, 32B was kind of like, oh, you can opt into the provision. And then it was kind of, then they changed it and said, okay, well, you know, now you're locked in forever and so forth and so on. And so when we got to doing the OPEB trust, one of the concerns was, hey, we don't want to adopt the language that the state had at the time. Now they've changed it since then, but at the time they had language that basically said, oh, you can put in whatever you want. It's dedicated for OPEB, but you have to calculate what you should be putting in every couple of years, right? And our concern was that at some point the state would come along and say, okay, well, now we're going to make you put in, because we're seeing that everybody's falling behind. We're going to, you know, change it so that if you've adopted a trust under this provision, you now have to make the minimum contribution, right? So are we insulated? And again, I'm just asking your opinion, right? Are we insulated from that in 5D? Meaning if they say, okay, you got to figure out what your pension liability is, are we worried that they're going to come back and say, okay, you know, now, hey, if you've got one of these stabilization funds, you have to fund it because we've noticed that people are falling behind on their pension funding, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. So the biggest thing here is, and I think I referenced it in the comments, is right, the annual required contribution that we must calculate biannually and are obligated to fund via PERAC's sort of oversight. On the town side is the Middlesex retirement system, and on the teacher side is the Mass Teachers Retirement System. Those are the two systems where, you know, we have annually required contributions. They work differently. Our employees get their, you know, sort of deductions taken out of their pay depending on when they entered the public pension system. Those are those requirements. The 5D, we're setting it up under, and again, it's a little bit sort of different than those two scenarios. We're setting this up as essentially another fund to supplement the other two, but does not create a new annual required contribution, right? Our actuarially calculated liabilities sit with Middlesex and with MTRS.
Okay. Good. So, okay, so you can start sharing again, Travis. Anybody have any further questions on that one? That was, 24, 23. Okay, now that one, so we're gonna, okay, so 23, that's gonna require, I already noted that's gonna require something other than favorable action. So go ahead, keep going.
Okay, so then just the last thing on that is that I tried to put in next to other what the funding source is. So for this one, this is the one where, you know, we get an annual amount that we pay to Middlesex, then there's savings when we pay it up front. And then generally speaking, what we do is then put that back into Middlesex at the end of the year. This year it's $43,524. That's the seed money to go in. So the other funding sources within what's left from the FY21 omnibus budget becomes the seed money for the fund.
Right, so that's why I noted this separately, right? Because our recommendation for this would be that the town appropriate $43,524 from the FY21 liability insurance or pension, whatever budget to fund to start that. Okay, this is we talked about these revolving funds before. Did you make any changes since the last time we looked at this?
I think I sent the changes that I had made. People wanted, so I put in the comments the wages that we're contemplating here. You know, increasing the flexibility to open the recycling center more was kind of the wages. And I believe that was the change made for this one. I did have another change on the EV charging station, which is the next one.
But there wasn't support to adding reporting requirements to the finance committee?
No, so the response was essentially, it's all public information. So, you know, and you know, you can request the information whenever. We can just set up a time at which the reporting is done, but it wouldn't be a requirement because it's public information. But I did ask for a review on that one.
Yeah, I just wanted it so that we didn't actually have to physically remember to request it. But
yeah, I mean, I would say we would add it to the quarterly and then have, you know, if it's needed more frequently to just set up a system to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not that concerned. I'm not worried about getting the data.
Do you want me to get into 25?
Let's see, this is we also talked about this one.
Yeah.
Now this one, right, this one, we did have the conversation about, you know, that basically the town will not be subsidizing charging stations at any, you know, taxpayers won't be subsidizing charging stations, right? That's why, so go ahead, you might want to comment on that.
So that one was added under other requirements, is simply stating the fact that the cost to provide the electricity will be the minimum, essentially, that the rate will be set at. It will probably be set higher than that, but that would be the floor so that there is not a subsidy to the end user. And that was based on the discussion that we had previously.
Yeah, now the one question I have, right, that does address the cost of electricity, but as you mentioned, there's a capital cost that you said that changes the rate dramatically. I'm not saying I want that in the thing here, but the one thing that, again, not for this, but I think that needs to be kept on the radar for you is what is the long-term strategy? In other words, like we can get, you know, right now there are grants for these things. We can get the grant to put in the station, right? But I think that when it comes to not just the rate setting, but there needs to be a strategy with, okay, if the lifetime of these charging stations is, you know, 20 years, is the plan that we just go, you know, there's going to be grant money available 20 years from now? Is the plan that we're going to, you know, have a little rate differential to provide for maintenance, you know? And again, I'm not anti these at all, but I think that the only thing that I think about from a long-term perspective is, in a very real sense, this is like building a town gas station, right? When cars first came out. And now you have a country that's, you know, gas stations are all over the place, right? So it may be that 10 or 15 years from now, if electric vehicles are much more dominant, that you do have charging facilities, you know, that theoretically the Gulf station, as everybody talks about downtown, that could theoretically be a charging station, right? And so I think that obviously we can't predict now where that's going to go, but I think that there may be an option down the road. Again, I'm not talking about this article because it doesn't impact this article, but I think that it's one of these things that we have to consider in terms of what do we think the landscape for charging is going to look like as electric vehicles proliferate. And I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that, but I think that will ultimately factor into, what is the future of a town-owned gas station, so to speak, 20 years from now. So.
Yeah, and I think the idea here was to protect. I think I've shared with all, and I don't know that everybody would agree with me, but what I would ideally like to do is set a rate that not only captures the cost of providing the service, but captures the depreciation of the asset, which needs to be calculated. And I've had those discussions with Sharon. I mean, we have the ability. We do have a fixed cost a fixed cost or fixed asset system that we are required to have to do our annual audits. Can we use that in this instance to help us set the rate? Like I said, I've looked at a number of towns that they span the gamut here. So, I think just setting the idea within this other requirements when the fund is set up to say that we have no intention of subsidizing the cost, I think is the floor. But as I said, when we get to a point where we need to be setting a rate as a policy for the town, I intend to at least have in the conversation the idea that we would like to capture the depreciation of the assets, so we're set up to replace it by the end of its useful life.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So any objections to this one? That was 25. So, let's see, we had 24 and 25. Okay. So favorable action on those two. There's nothing else. Okay, go ahead. So I think 24 and 25 were good. Road acceptance, we don't really care about. There's no financial implication to this one, is there?
I would say a number of the comments had to do with the idea that there is a drainage issue in that the way that this whole thing was designed and went through multiple ownerships, it has these ponds that accept the drainage. So one of the questions was, is the town accepting maintenance of the roadway and the drainage? And the answer is yes. That's what we do when we have a road acceptance. But the one thing I just wanted to make sure and is clearly defined here is we don't own those ponds, and we're not taking sort of ownership of these things to maintain the drainage and the roadway. That is certainly within this. So there's those cost components that are in the normal road acceptance. And so with that, otherwise it's a pretty standard how we accept roads. And I will say that we've had quite a few reviews of it through Ali Parand as engineering services with Tom Smith on behalf of the highway and Karen Sherman. And compared to other roads that we've accepted, the town feels pretty good about the state that this road is in as we're accepting it. It doesn't have a lot of the issues that we see with some other developers that I won't name here in other parts of town.
Well, the one question I will ask, just because, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but just for my own and education of the public, when these developments, we had a discussion years ago when we had a board of water commissioners about developments putting in substandard, or I shouldn't say that, piping below the town standards for water that would then cost us for replacement. They would put in lower quality pipes that would, require replacement after 25 years. And at the time, the board of water commissioners said, yeah, we're changing it to basically make sure that the development, goes in with things at the standards we expect. And I assume that's the case in this case. But the only reason I'm asking is because that's the financial impact I'm talking about, right? Is once we accept it, we then have the burden of taking care of all these things if they weren't done right. So Chief Cassidy, I see you want to chime in. So go ahead.
Isn't town water in this development? That's why there's a fire cistern.
Ah, okay. I was going to ask you what a fire cistern was. So
The 10,000 gallon holding tank underneath the ground that we can pump out of.
Interesting. So, okay, Michelle, you had a question?
Travis probably knows I'm going to ask this. So when you mention Ali, do you keep track of his time and figure out if it's ever more effective or more economical for us to have a town engineer?
That's an analysis that has started. I think, for those types of things, it's difficult to say that having somebody, to replace when we're talking about infrequent road acceptances. Once you get into coupling what could have been done, what could be done with a staff person, for example, with the stormwater article in December and those types of things. Once you start to piece it all together, I think there's a compelling argument, but I think that's for a future
Right.
day. Yeah, but we can certainly run, Ali works for AP Associates. We can run a vendor search, see all the things where it's charged to and piece that together, certainly.
I don't mean right now. I mean, sometime,
Absolutely.
in the future. Just reminding me. But we've had this discussion before. So.
Yes, so Travis, is this the same Ali as water treatment plant Ali?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering if it's the same guy. So,
yeah.
Okay, so any other questions? Now, as I said, I mean, I guess we usually don't weigh in on road acceptances unless there's a financial component that we know about. So I don't know if everybody wants to take favorable action, I can put it on the list. If we don't see there's any.
There will be. I mean, we're going to have to plow it. So
No, but I'm saying, I mean, yeah, that's fine. But usually what I meant by financial implication is like something where somebody's asking for road acceptance where we know there's going to be town expense to, put in lights or redo the curbing or something like that. So, but okay, so we can weigh in on that if we want to. Okay, keep going. And this is okay. This is the
just a timing thing.
But just out of curiosity, this is which bylaws was this in? Is this the general bylaws? So I was going to say I thought this was in zoning. So why is this sponsored by the select board? Shouldn't this have come from the planning board?
It essentially does, just based on sort of timing of some things. The vote on this will be Thursday. So to get it on, again, I mean, there's when I say, and because of the title of the article, people are going to have interest. But at the end of the day, all we're really doing is removing something that's sunset. This was put in as a temporary measure at a previous point in time. We've since fixed the issue. And at the time that it was fixed, the temporary language should have been removed and wasn't. So we're just removing it now.
Yeah. No, I understood the point of the article. I just thought it was unusual because usually these things come from the planning board. So
yeah, they'll have, as I put in the comment, they're going to have their public hearing on it, this Thursday, and then it would have been otherwise planning board.
Okay,
so people at home, Article 27 is not permitting retail marijuana in Holliston.
It has nothing to do with it. It's just removing expired stuff. And that's stated in the warrant too. It says that it doesn't change that.
You just have to read it. So, if you just read the headline, all of a sudden,
Yeah. I mean, well, we did pass 6 different bans on it. So we're just, we're removing one of the old ones. So okay. So 27, I think, and again, I don't know, do we even weigh in on that? Because that's a zoning provision we don't usually touch. So we'll leave that one alone. Same with 28, right? This is, I don't think there's any financial implication of this. This is just basically changing regulations for large scale solar. Do we know of any financial problems here, Travis? I don't think there are any.
No, I mean, if anything, on some unused property in town, you may start to see some people kick the tires on solar. We have one across from actually our solar at Marshall. People are looking at a property that's been referred to as the Bird property for solar. I'm not sure where they are. So
everybody in town knows the Bird property, that's for sure.
Okay, so there's been interest in some other parcels in town that I think this would help move along. That may take some parcels that are unused and make them usable for those types of purposes. But no negative financial impacts I'm aware of.
Okay, so I don't think we weigh on that one. Scenic road designation, does that have any financial implication? I don't think it does.
No, I mean,
it actually saves us money because we can't cut down trees now. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't touch the rock walls, you can't touch trees without going through the process.
Okay. Now I will ask the one question. It's not financial on this, but does this change anything relative to any discussions of traffic mitigation?
Yeah. So
it's not our business. I'm just curious as an individual if it does.
Yeah. So I've actually submitted a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion application on South Street to Mass DOT. I will say that, and I think I shared this previously, but the numbers on South Street were pretty high. It was 14%, was shocking to me. In those applications, it would be supported by the idea if it was a scenic road designation. But I think at 14%, it won't necessarily impact that. But if town meeting supports it, I will probably amend the application to say, by the way, town meeting has supported this as a scenic road. The only other thing that was mentioned the other day that I found out, because either end of South Street are both state-owned highways, we will not be needing to purchase any signs. Any signs for the heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for South Street, if it were to be approved, would actually be furbished and provided by Mass DOT on the Medway side and then the Holliston side of South Street. But other than that, it would support that application, but I think that application stands by itself.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, so there's no financial problem here. Okay, so we'll skip that one too. Okay, easement. Oh, this one, yes, this is, okay, this one needs special treatment, so skip that one. Blair Square, that one will need special treatment. Keep going. So will that one, so keep going on that one. So will that one. These are all the ones we're going to have to make recommendations to give funding. Same with 34. Okay, so 34. And then now 35 is, okay, so this is Mary's petition about the planning. And right now, this has no money associated with it, correct?
Right.
Okay. So what does the committee feel about this? Do we want to weigh in?
I'd like to weigh in because we're mentioned in the article.
Oh, we are. Okay. So we'll weigh in. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, let me rephrase that. What is the committee's feeling on this? Would you want favorable action on this? Do you want to hold that in the list of things we discuss later?
Well,
I'm just thinking what can go in a blanket favorable action motion.
One thing we had mentioned or discussed at one point, I forget with who, but was, do we take a position on it or do we simply mention in our budget memo that we are not voting on it because it's not technically financial, but it had, I'm fine either way. I don't think it matters because nothing says we can't take a vote on it.
Well, that's I mean, as I said, we're mentioned on it in terms of, we're mentioned in it, but not with regards to funding, right? Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
I think we should take a vote if we're mentioned in it.
Okay, so then given that, is the feeling that we just vote favorable action because there's no money associated with it? Or unfavorable? I mean, I don't know what the committee thinks. Favorable action, unfavorable action. Should I put this in the favorable action? Let's put it that way.
I'm favorably inclined to be favorably actioned.
Okay.
I'm in favor of it. Then.
Okay, that was what, 30? What number was that? 35. I just want to make sure I get the right number here. Okay, 35. Okay. Okay, and then we have 36, which is what the other, there are two more petitions. Okay, so
36, no money.
But 30, so 36 is mine.
Yep, but there's no money.
I will abstain. There's no money, but it does impact the finance committee because you be required to use your, I mean, not that we don't already, but it impacts the finance committee.
Okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm certainly in favor of it. I already use my town email for everything for town business. So I understand why Dan wanted this on the ballot, or on the warrant rather. And, I do agree that my concern and why I would personally support this is because I'm more worried about liability issues, right? If people, we went a long time, even myself, way before we had town emails, where we used our own emails for communication. And, it wasn't really relevant back then because nothing really happened via email, and things still don't really happen via email. But, nowadays you might get record requests and things like that. And, 20 years ago, it was hard to argue that, the town, it was a pain to provide these kinds of emails. But since it's been easy, and I guess Dan did talk to Chris, and Chris kind of said it's a no-brainer to be able to set these emails up. So
and costless. Whereas I think before we went to the Google stuff, there was actually a cost to setting up emails.
Right. So So to me, I just look at it as this is just sheltering us from a legal perspective to make sure that, that town business is conducted on town email.
Additionally, I've seen people online ask to be able to contact their, different people on different boards. And if you have a town email address, you can get it linked onto the town website for a contact us type of, thing where they don't do that with personal email addresses. So it'll help with sort of constituent services, if you will, and with, the ability to look up everybody's name very quickly in the system. We've sent emails to people that, have had town email even and haven't been using it. And we've also tried to send emails to other people and not have been able to find email addresses and things like this. So I think it'll help with overall communication between us and other boards, and I'm sure between different boards and in town, just separate from us.
Okay. Well, you're obviously in favor because it's your article, but so what's the feeling of the rest of the committee? Is this a favorable action?
The only thing I would say is we need to
vote separately.
We need to vote separately.
So, okay. So I'll just note that actually. Say that. Okay.
But yes to favorable action, at least from me.
Okay. And then 37 is the expanding the select board from 3 to 5.
Do we know who the petitioner is on this?
No. I will tell, as I said, I was contacted by somebody who, requested from me what the process was to get a petition article on. And I understood that they were looking to something like this, but I had nothing to do with this, just for the record. I've helped many people, including the school start time people and other people, help get their petitions, follow the process, but that's all I did on this one.
How much is it going to cost for a special election?
Okay, hold on. Well, the answer to that, I think, is about $7,500. But Michelle, go ahead. You had a question.
Well, I was going to say this does have a financial impact because it mentions a special election. Plus, if there is a stipend, if the recommendation of the stipend committee is not followed, the 2 additional board members will be 2 additional stipends.
Right, so $50. So it'll be $7,550.
Because we've been accused of overreaching, and I just want to say it is not overreaching for us to vote on this.
So I think we should make a recommendation at town meeting.
Bye.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea because maybe we can find out more from the petitioner. As I said, I haven't heard. We haven't been given any information on this. So part of me says, we should just recommend, and then if they come to us and want to give us some of the data, we can go from there. Vin, you had a question?
No, that was it. Just the dollar amount, but you've already answered it. So,
okay.
Why wait?
Well, because we haven't really gotten the information. I mean, obviously we can read it and we can see that it requires a special election. We can see that there might be a stipend implication, right? So that's why I said we can cost it out at $7,550.
Well, it's $7,550 for year 1, and then year 2, it's $100.
Yes, it's $100.
If they take it.
No, but my point is normally we don't.
It's $50, right? Because 25. They're presuming that you wouldn't have. You still only have 1 chair, right? So
normally we wait to talk to the petitioner for petition articles before taking a position on them, and since we haven't met with the petitioner, that's why I would be in favor of just making the recommendation at town meeting. But I mean, I think it's a good idea overall. I'm not opposed to it. I just think that our procedure has been that we met with the other 2 petitioners of the citizens petition, right? We met with Mary and me. So I don't think we're being consistent there.
No, that's fair. I like the idea. That's why I was wondering. So okay.
Okay, and that's the very end, right? So, okay, so let me see. So let me just put 37 on the list of things we have to. Okay, so the favorable action ones that I have are 2, 3, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 24, 25, 26, and 35.
So I make a recommendation that the Finance Committee recommend favorable action on the articles that Ken just mentioned.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none. We'll
good luck, Mark.
What?
And good luck, Mark, getting the numbers.
Yeah, well, I have the list here. I can give them the numbers separately, but Okay, so take a roll call vote. Ms. Ziemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so we have all those done in one batch motion. Okay, so now we have to start going through the ones that need individual discussion or individual recommendations that aren't just favorable action. So we'll start with 4. Okay, and this is the stipend one. Yes. Okay, so Dan, you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about this one. So,
Right. So I don't know how we want to phrase this exactly, but I'd like to phrase this that we recommend favorable, or that we recommend. Do we have to? We're not going to raise and appropriate here, right?
no, we don't. This is just approving the compensation.
Yeah.
The raise and appropriate part.
So that we recommend favorable action, but in addition with that, this vote represents our approval of or our acceptance of the implementation of the stipend committee's report.
So how would we properly phrase that? We'd
That's
say
what
that it's
that's what
yeah, favorable action.
Yeah, favorable action on the report, on
the article in the report. I don't know.
no, but the favorable action of the stipend committees.
Well, but I guess what he's saying is,
Recommendations.
Yeah,
right, do you say that the recommendation is favorable action on the article as well as favorable action?
It's not favorable action. It's more that we're recommending favorable action, and this favorable action in this case also sort of signifies it because it's not also favorable because the report is not here.
We can
But
say in
Well,
accordance.
it's in an appendix. It's in the
Well-
yeah,
But it's not its own warrant item, but more that
right.
our recommendation signifies our support for the stipend committee's conclusions.
I think we need to be specific because the conclusions were that it should come up at town meeting. And so
the
I think we should be
conclusion-
specific that it would be the conclusion that these are phased out beginning in 2023 or whatever the wording was. I forget exactly.
Sure.
Or you could say favorable action and as the first step, because they said pay them this year and then eliminate, right? Say it's the first step in phasing them out per the stipend committee's recommendation.
Yep.
I mean, that's one way of saying it.
Okay. So moved.
Yeah, second.
Okay. Any further discussion on 4? Okay. Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Ziemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so we have 4. So let me just make a note of that. That's favorable action with stipend committee. Okay. I just have to do it because I'm going to have to go back and check this to make sure I put it right in the report. Okay, so 5. Let's go on to 5. This is the unpaid bills, and this one's separate. A lot of these are separate because they need financial things. So this one would be now this is going to be. How did you want to pay for this? We talked about this earlier, Travis. Do you want this to be a appropriate, or raise and appropriate, or
Transfer from the reserve fund.
oh, that's right. That's right. You want the reserve fund. Okay.
If you're
So,
fine with that would be the cleanest thing.
Yeah. So then the
gonna break
motion
the
on this one would say that the finance committee recommends that the town appropriate. What's the total there? 175.78.
No, 185.
Well, 185.78. Right.
Geez, MIT.
Yeah. Well, hey, you didn't line up the columns for me. So okay. So the motion would be that we recommend that the town appropriate 185.78 from the reserve fund for the payment of these unpaid bills.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, let's proceed to a vote. Ms. Ziemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Nersessian,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
And I vote yes. And everybody stop screwing with your cameras because you're changing the order every time people keep turning cameras on and off. It's messing with the order I take the votes in. So okay, so 5 is done. Okay, let me just make a note on that. Okay, 6 is the transfers. Okay, so this one.
Do we still have the 16 overlay for 21? Snow and ice overlay?
The 60 reserve for snow and ice. Technically, we should. There should be 60,000. The question is what happens with that money? That's just 60,000 we reserve from the bottom line, right? So that technically.
Yeah, that's in your unused levy capacity, the 555.
Yeah. So now.
Okay.
138.1. Yeah, we'll talk. We can talk about that offline, Dan. I can tell you how we should do that going forward. But anyway, okay. So snow and ice. This would be a recommendation that the finance committee recommends that we appropriate $138,100 from the reserve fund for snow and ice, and $55,000 from water retained earnings to the water department budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on this?
I just had a quick question. There were no snow emergencies where there'd be reimbursements, were there?
No FEMA.
FEMA's too busy paying out CARES money right now.
Okay.
The only question I would have is this, between this, I mean, granted it was only whatever, $185, but so basically about 140. So I'm just thinking of where we're going to be sitting with the reserve fund after this for FY21. It's still high, but I'm just asking because we know that there were potential issues with the schools that might need some reserve money as they get to the end of the year. So do we know where our balance would be after this, right? Do you have our current balance, Travis?
Yeah, so with what was done in December, which brought it up to the 790, we're now just under 600,000, the 597 range.
Okay, so we should, and this plugs the snow and ice hole for the year. So, okay, so that would be the recommendation.
So,
and we had a second, right? I think that was moved in
You're
second.
making the assumption we won't have snow in May, but that's,
Yes, well, it does. Yes, but at the same time, we're allowed to carry that forward, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so there was a motion and it was second, I believe. And if there wasn't, then somebody say something now before I find this out after we adjourn. Okay, so we'll proceed to a vote. Ms. Ziemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so 6 is done. Okay, 19 was next on the list.
You're doing.
Oh, did we?
At the end?
No, we need 9 and
No,
10.
7 was favorable action. We did that already.
9 and 10.
You're doing governance committee at the end? That's 9 and 10.
Yeah, 9 and 10 are going to have a separate discussion.
Okay, that at the end. So you said 17?
17, yes. 19.
Oh, 19, okay. Oh, there it is.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Just have to deal with okay, so 19 is, yes. So this one is just, the motion would be that we recommend that the town raise and appropriate 1.75 million for the capital expenditure fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on this one? Okay, let's proceed to a vote. Okay. Let's go. Ms. Ziemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
and Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Okay, now hang on 1 second. So that's 19. Because I have to Okay, so I've gotten a couple of requests to take a very short bathroom break for anybody who might need one. Do we want to take a 5-minute break to allow that to happen?
Sure.
So now
Yes,
we're the
please.
select board.
Hey, I'm
Enough.
responding. I'm being responsive to the membership. I wouldn't want to be seen as a dictator here.
I'll go
So,
get us
okay,
back.
so let's take a quick 5-minute break. We don't even have to necessarily stop the recording. I mean, I guess it's up to Chris if he wants to pause the recording or something.
Ken,
We'll take a quick 5-minute break and reconvene at, yes, Mr. Whitaker.
sorry, before that, you didn't actually express a vote out loud on that last one. I assume.
Oh, yes, I vote yes.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. Okay, okay, so we'll take a quick 5-minute break. 8:46, we will resume. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully everybody's a little more comfortable now, and I won't be getting text messages from everybody saying, take a break, take a break. So it's game management here, game management. Okay, so we were on Article 20. So Travis, do you want to resume sharing on 20?
You did 19?
Yes, that was the vote we took right before the break, right? It was the 1.75 million. 20, okay, so scroll down a little bit because 20, we got to see the list. So this motion would be that the Finance Committee recommend that the town, and now all of this, let's see, I'm looking, truck, all of this is CapEx, right? It's coming from Capital Expenditure Fund. Yes, you have the note at the bottom. Okay.
Before you read the motion, what is the new process going to be, or not new, but the product, because we did not get presentations on all this. The Capital Subcommittee, I guess, did, right? So that's what's coming out of this. It's just a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So is that sort of how we're going to, I'm not asking for it right now that we're going to vote on this and we're going to move forward. But
Travis prepared, and I thought you sent it out to everybody. Maybe it was my fault. But Travis prepared. Do you remember in the fall, we got each one of these things had a kind of a sheet that Travis had filled out with all the.
I barely remember last week. So if
okay.
It was something that
as I said, if you didn't get it, that's my fault. I should have forwarded.
No, I do. It's vaguely familiar. Okay.
But that's my point. Was that's what Travis has been doing for each of these things. He prepares a sheet, and then that sheet is usually sent to us. So we definitely reviewed those in the Capital Subcommittee. But I don't remember whether I don't remember sending them out. I might have, and I don't know whether Travis did.
I think I sent out the list. I think all the backup went to the Capital Subcommittee, which I want to say was last week, Monday or Tuesday, took a vote to support this list. But so they got all the backup. I think the list that I sent out to the full group was probably looking at May as compared to what I'm projecting out in October. And then I think everybody's had access to what is, a draft form of the 5-year CIP that's being developed out of the 5-year needs assessment from the Collins Center. So some of it's in draft form, but what's in here has been no major change other than the swap, probably, 2 to 3 weeks ago now, as it relates to the DPW pickup truck with rack body was swapped in the place of the sweeper, which is now planned for October as we evaluate. Otherwise, this is the list that had been sent out and reviewed by the Capital Subcommittee.
Okay.
Can we go through a few of them? Like, I'd like to understand the electronic key door system, the security camera. Like, can we just maybe get a high-level overview on some of these?
Absolutely. So I don't know, Travis, do you want to go through, quickly? I mean, I know it's 10 items or whatever we got here. But if you want to, you can share those, the item, share the backup material if you want with the committee at once. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I can pull up if anybody wants to deep dive. So a lot of these have quotes. The ones that our facilities have the 5-year, James Keese is the one who's really adopted first. And next year I plan to have fully implemented that ICMA format of a 5-year capital request form that has all the information. Including, the information about maintaining some of these capital assets. And I can go through that form if we want to. But the first 4 are all related to the police station. The building battery backup system is most likely, is probably best described as facilities rather than IT. It is a system that supports if you lose power, all of the telecommunications. So
right. Just not to interrupt you here, Travis, but for the committee's sake, this is something we've talked about in the past. This is not the first time we've replaced these batteries. Remember the chief came in several years ago and said that every few years they have to replace this, giant pile of lead acid batteries that basically provide battery backup for all the emergency systems in the police station.
Yeah. And so we're at the end of the 5 years. We did have a review sort of at the end of those 5 years to say, yeah, you still have a little bit left here. That costs $900 to do that evaluation. So rather than do it into midway through the 6th year, the idea is to replace it. I think in the next 5 years, what we want to do is make sure that we have a full evaluation if this is the backup system that we want for those telecommunications. The building also has a generator that supports other activities. This is to support the telecommunications. The next 3 are IT. All those quotes were pulled by Chris Mayo. A number of them support the accreditation of the HPD. like the electronic key door system. If you've progressed through that building at all, you understand to go from one room to another, you need a key code system. You need a key access, to get from room to room. That system is just at the end of its useful life based on, the technology at the time that the building was built. So again, for the telephone system, the voice recorder, and the key door system, all of those quotes were pulled by Chris Mayo. We did look at whether the telephone system could be timed with future needs of either town hall or the schools. And at the end of the day, the recommendation from Chris Mayo is to do it now. So those are the police ones. I'll stop there.
Okay, Michelle?
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry, Sue was first, but go ahead, Michelle.
Why are a lot of these things now instead of the fall? Don't we usually do fall unless it's timed, like, something that is a long lead time, like a snowplow that has to be ordered now, so we have it in time for the winter?
Yeah, I would say, specifically for the four I just mentioned, they all are pretty much at the end of useful life. We are concerned about the voice recorder system, the telephone system. Again, if we could wait until we could couple it with others, we would, but we think it's time sensitive. The electronic key door system as well has been acting up. I had it sort of split between May and October, but again, with this list, we think doing all of these together makes sense. And the battery backup, quite honestly, we've had the issue of it acting up, and we don't want to get in that situation again. And when I say acting up, I mean exploding. So, don't want to do that.
It's an emergency.
Right. And so I can get through the urgency on that. I would say at this point, I certainly understand the point. A number of these things, if they can wait till October, they will. But I think for these ones, we see the need now, and the benefit of doing them, or at least getting the authorization to do them now.
Okay.
Okay.
I can answer specifics on anything on the list, but I was just stopping at the police because I saw hands.
And just to be clear, all of these were supported by the capital subcommittee, correct? And then there were no
Correct.
alterations by the select board?
There's been support so far.
But the select board didn't add anything or remove any. This is
No,
all came from the capital committee.
I recommended swapping out the two DPW at the top of the priority list for the DPW fleet. I recommended swapping. That was really the conversation I had with the select board. They're comfortable with the backup they were provided.
But that was supported by the capital subcommittee.
Yes.
Yes. This is the list that we approved last week.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, the committee voted unanimously to approve the 431,000.
You have to do what the planning board does. You have to say, at our meeting on April 20th, 2021.
Want me to tell you when it was? It was.
No, don't. We got it.
No.
I have just a quick question for Travis on the
21st.
three that are technology related. Are they the same vendor? So are we able to get sort of a bundled discount?
They're not. So what I did, I removed from the voice recorder system the proprietary company. Although I don't believe we have another option. I try to always remember to remove the proprietary information or the vendor from it. But I don't believe we have another option to go with on that voice recorder system. I think it is an issue of just replacing it through the same type of system.
Okay.
And the telephone and key door system, I don't believe can be done through the same vendor. I can pull those quotes though, if we want to pull those up.
It was more just curiosity. I mean, if we can get, discounts, that's always good. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so any other question on that? Okay, so moving on to the facility stuff, Travis, you want to give a quick
Sure. So security cameras, this is sort of covering the gamut of what we have now, filling holes to have information. One of the questions that came up was sort of, what we're going to do with that data and those types of things. I think, that probably falls into the town policy. And I did ask James to be prepared to speak to that with the capital subcommittee. We didn't get into it, but I think that the question, is a good one and needs to be answered from a policy perspective of how we would be willing to share any of that information with authorities if requested. Those types of things, I think, is a town decision that we should have further conversations on. But this is really filling the holes, protecting our assets. In the instances of some of these facilities are not manned, not staffed for periods of time, especially over weekends, to make sure that if anything happens, we capture any vandalism, those types of things. The central fire rehabilitation, as I said, James Keese is putting together sort of 5-year facilities based on dude solution output. The central fire is actually, he has essentially a 3-year look at that building. This is phase 1. I believe he's actually approaching the CPC in the October timeframe for some other items related to upkeep of the historic structure. This is really more, things that are just keeping the facility going. There's some struggles with it. The 1750 Washington HVAC package units, this was on his plan for FY23. One of the units is going to rent the crane to fix this is, costly. So the idea is essentially we're going to need to do all of these. We had planned in FY23 to 24 timeline. Let's do it now. They're the HVAC package units. And so that's 1750. The DPW radio replacement, if we want to get, fully into that, I would refer to Chief Cassidy. A major element of this is making sure we get all of our people on the same frequency. Public safety is on the same frequency. The frequencies don't open very often, and when they do, this is, again, to Michelle's point, we're hopping on an opportunity here. And then there's a cost to make sure that all of our equipment sort of talks to each other, but we think this is a great opportunity. The pickup truck with rack body, this is one that, what we run these things to the end of useful life. The one that was the biggest issue was the sweeper, which is in the shop. Now we're looking at whether or not we even want to do that. So we put that on the October timeline and moved up this vehicle, which is, needs to be replaced to May. And then the two that came from the schools, these have been, they highlighted these a while ago. I've asked for any information moving forward, which they promised me is forthcoming once they get through some other major, costs they're going through at the moment. But, I'd really like to tie the 5-year outlook we can all discuss with the schools for October. I have left on there the assumption that they'll have some large capital costs in October, but these are the only ones that they have time sensitive right now. Replacement of boilers, which I believe is the Adams complex, and then the networking infrastructure, I believe they highlighted for the school committee's vote.
Yeah. Now, just one thing I would add is on the radio replacement, right? As the committee may recall, right, we voted in the last couple of town meetings, we voted for various equipment, the repeaters, things like this. It is my understanding from having this discussion in the capital subcommittee that this is the last piece, right? This is going to get us the coverage, get everybody aligned, get all the equipment. So, personally, I'm hoping this doesn't become like library roofs, where we're seeing radio equipment for the next 8 years. So, but that I've been told that this should be it. So everybody should be on the same page, and we should have full town coverage with a newer system going forward. So, okay. Any other discussion on the items here? Okay, if hearing none, then what I would recommend is our motion should be that the Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $13,750 for a building battery backup system for the police, $11,600 for a replacement telephone system for the police station, $10,000 for a voice recorder system at the police station, $54,000 for an electronic key door system at the police station, $75,000 for security cameras at municipal buildings, $50,000 for rehabilitation at the central fire station, $33,500 for HVAC package units at 1750 Washington Street, $47,590 for radio replacement at the DPW, $55,000 for a replacement pickup truck with a rack body for the DPW, $55,000 appropriate $55,000 to replace boilers at the schools, since we don't know exactly which one, and $26,400 for networking infrastructure equipment for the schools, all to be funded from the capital expenditure fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? Okay, so I hear none, we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Ziemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so 20 is capital. Okay, 21. This is CPC, and we heard about this just to remind everybody. We did hear from Frank. These are the two proposals. You see the two proposals he's got listed there, and then the administrative functions. These are the three items he talked to us about a few weeks ago.
And then I
So,
believe Tim Maxwell had asked for the balances.
Yeah.
So these are the buckets.
Yeah, and just as a reminder for both the committee and for anybody who's watching at home, right? As a general rule, there are minimums in the CPA that you have to put into each of these reserves, but the rest can be kind of undesignated and moved into whichever reserve you want when you're ready to make a purchase or make some acquisition or whatever. So as a general rule, what we do, and the town has done for many years, is we put the bulk of the CPA money in the budget reserve, and we fund the other three mandatory reserves kind of at their minimum, and then we just move the money as necessary. So that's why you see it 70, 70, 70, and 490 in the general reserve. Okay, so if everybody's okay with this, based on what Frank said, then the motion would be that we recommend that the town appropriate $5,000 for administrative support or administrative functions, $5,812 for a dock system for Stoddard Park, $52,100 for improvements to the community farm from the CPC. Let's see. Yes. And to extend, I'll talk about this in a second. Let me just finish the motion. And to extend the sunset date from October 28th, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 for the $100,000 appropriation from the CPC General Reserve approved in October 2019 for the purpose of assisting the Parks and Recs Department with renovations to the town-owned baseball fields. But with the money for the first three items coming from the Community Preservation Fund budget reserve, general reserve.
Second.
Okay. So now just to clarify, this one item that was added later, if you remember, we approved this money previously, but then because of COVID, the implementation got delayed, and we had built in, the CPC had built in a sunset. So this is nothing, there's nothing untoward resulting in this delay other than COVID preventing the work from being done last year as they planned. So, okay, any further discussion on this one? Okay, if not, then I'll proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so we're good on that. Was 21. Okay. 23. 22. Yes, 22. Why didn't I put that in the list? Oh, yeah, I did have it here. Okay. So 22 that's easy. The recommendation is that we indefinitely postpone.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I assume there's no discussion on that. So I'll proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so we've got 22 indefinitely postponed. Okay, 23 is the pension liability fund. Okay, so this one, we've already discussed it. The motion would be that we recommend that the town appropriate $43,524 from the FY21. This is in the, which line is this actually in, Travis? This is in the county retirement line, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So $43,524 from the county retirement line of the FY21 omnibus budget for the establishment of the pension liability stabilization fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one? Okay. Let's proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, that one's done. Okay. Okay, we only have 7 more, so we're
Sorry.
almost there.
One second.
Next one.
Who seconded that last one? Was that Tim?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, next is 30. We already did 24, 5, 6. So, and then there's the other ones are zoning, so we don't care. So 30 is the next one on the list. Okay, this is the easement. Now, Travis has told us about this. Quick summary is we approved the money for the septic system at Town Hall last town meeting. Since then, they've come to an agreement on the easement. So this one is very straightforward. This is no new money. This is just taking 51,000 of that 150 that we approved and putting it towards the easement. The overall system will still stay within the 150,000. So there's no danger of running out of money, at least based on the current projections. So the motion here would be that we recommend that the town appropriate $51,000 from the appropriation of Article 5 at the December 2020 special town meeting for the purpose stated in the article.
So moved.
Second. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
It's all you see.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? And I'll just say, rather than saying any further discussion, from now on, raise your hand. If I don't see a hand up, because I can't see everybody, I can only see raised hands. So if I don't see a raised hand, we'll just keep moving. So, okay, we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, that's 30. So let's go on to 31. Okay, this one we also heard about from Travis. This is for the Blair Square thing. So if everybody's on board with this one, this would be that the town finance committee recommends that the town raise and appropriate $45,000 for the purpose stated in the article.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, see no hands, so proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Aye.
Ms. Nersessian?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
I vote yes. Okay, 31's done. Okay, 32. This is the Green Street demolition. Yes, we talked about this one too. Scroll down a little bit because I think you want this to be raised and appropriate as well, correct? Yes, okay. So this would be that the motion would be that the Finance Committee recommends that the town raise and appropriate $118,500 for the purpose stated in the article.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, no hands. Proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Aye.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so that one's done. Okay, next is 33. Okay, so this is the DPW facility study. Again, there's another one that Travis has talked to us about. This would be also a motion that we recommend that the town raise and appropriate $75,000 for the purpose stated in the article.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, seeing no hands, Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Aye.
Ms. Nersessian?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so that's that. 34. Okay, okay, so this one would be that the Finance Committee recommends that the town appropriate $21,837 from Article 4 of the from the funding associated with Article 4 at the October 2019 special town meeting for the purpose stated in the article. I know Dan's not going to move this one, so.
Sorry, I don't understand it.
Okay, so okay, so I don't have nobody's making the motion, so we can have the discussion here. So, what do you want to know? Travis can answer anything you want to know. He's intimately associated with tax.
So, I don't understand the connection you just made with the fall town meeting.
Okay, so Travis can explain that. Travis, article. Well, actually, I can pull it up. Article 4. Let me.
Yeah. So there was an article, and I believe it was a capital article. So the item. Chief Cassidy's raising his hand because he has the knowledge of the original preemption equipment. So I would say if Chief can.
Okay. Well, Chief. Okay, he doesn't have his hand up now, but yeah, go ahead, Chief Cassidy, if you want to chime in. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Chief Cassidy. So this Are the remaining funds left over in the capital appropriation for the preemption equipment that was installed at intersections along Washington Street? The money that was appropriated was based on quotes that we got. We then used a different vendor and got a better price. And even after we built out all of the equipment that the police, fire, and the ambulance needed for their fleets, plus at the traffic signals, we had money left over.
Right. So the basic, the summary, to just summarize what the chief just said, we appropriated money for the equipment and the preemption equipment for the traffic lights. This is money that was left over from that, and they want to repurpose it for TAC use. That's what it comes down to.
Right. And so TAC had the request. And so again, I mean, some of these articles are written in ways where, you want them to be broad if things change and those types of things. The way that sort of description worked, especially for the sign as it relates to the flashing preemption sign and the woodland area, would match up with the way that article was written. But I think for from a processing standpoint, from a keeping everything on paper trail type standpoint, I think it's important to make sure that people understand where that money would potentially go. So it's essentially being reauthorized for this purpose in this article. And so TAC had an article for specific equipment at the December town meeting. These are other hearings that they've had and requests that they're looking to fill, which are laid out here. It's really answering three things. So the TAC is addressing Woodland Street, Church and Railroad, and then Elm. The Woodland Street is the school area. It's turning a crosswalk into one that has sort of the light up. There is, I can provide the quote obviously on that one as well, but it's a similar one to what's gone in the Pinecrest area, where it lights up when you cross the street. There's a couple different iterations of it. One is motion activated as you go towards it. The other one, obviously, you hit the button. They're solar powered, those types of things. Then there's also, so that's one of the components within the 21,000 addition, and that's the Woodland. Then there's the 4-way LED stop signs at Railroad and Church Street. That's the other one that they're requesting. And then finally, an entering school zone safety sign on Elm Street. So the one I referenced, on Woodland Street is the rapid rectangular flashing beacon. That is, we have them elsewhere in town, and that is specific to the crossing at Woodland. Then there's the entering school zone safety sign on Elm, and then there's a 4-way LED stop sign at Railroad and Church Street. Those are the three requests that would be within the 21,837, and taking that balance from what Chief Cassidy just highlighted. That's the request.
And are people running stop signs now? Because the stop signs are there. So I'm not sure I really understand the need for a brand new sign, or are we having people run the stop sign?
The request that they're getting in TAC, I mean, obviously, so I think we discussed it in December, right? The police chief is the chair of TAC. It also seats the fire chief, the DPW director, and then we have a number of appointees on it as well. So they're listening to these, taking the hearings that they think are appropriate, and listening to the requests of residents and responding as they can. I think the requests outweigh what they're able to address, but essentially, these are three that they felt compelled to take a vote on to request funding through town meeting.
And was there a reason that they didn't want to come? I guess, why didn't we have anybody come to talk about it, Ken?
Well, this was covered by Travis. That's why. I mean, this is technically.
Tina was there. Tina was there.
And Tina was here, yeah. But I'm saying technically it's a select board committee, so that's why Travis covers it.
So TAC and the process has been that TAC makes a recommendation to the select board who votes on it, and that's the process. Obviously, TAC is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. In Holliston, it's sort of solidifying a process that was previously, you'd go to the police department if you had these types of requests. Obviously, with the police chief as chair, that's still a component of it, but it's now a group that's sort of taking these. There's a form online to go through to request a hearing in front of TAC and those types of things. So I think we can certainly look at if we want in the future to have more involvement with the finance committee, along the stages of TAC before they come to these recommendations, or that, that type of presence on TAC, whether it's a seat or if it's a liaison or however. But yeah, that's where, again, it's relatively new. December was the first iteration. And this one, because of the connection with the preemption equipment, is sort of the funding source here.
Okay, so Sue, do you have a, oh, there you go. So 81.4, is that what we had in there for them?
I think so.
So I hope that matches up with what we just voted for capital.
It does.
Okay, good. And the
400 is, yeah.
Now I would just point out for the record that she wrote 37,098 and 52.3 cents there, right? So can we give them a budget of 37,000 and say?
She's probably doing multilingual, so she's probably
That's right.
Spanish and being confused.
No, but then no, if that were the case, then right.
No,
then,
I know, but halfway through she got confused and started doing.
Yeah, Michelle, you had a question?
I just wanted to address what Sue said about the Railroad Street, the four-way intersection. And I talked to Tina last week. It was 2 weeks ago. I've lost track of time. And she said that I think that request came from the school crossing guards who stood there and watched cars go through that intersection all the time without stopping.
Yeah, and there was also a conversation about where the school zone sign is relative to some of the streets that intersect just after it. And so people turn into it not knowing it's a school zone because there's no signage there or something like that. But
yeah, and that request came from David Kime.
Yeah. So anybody have any objections, or do you want to make the motion as I read it earlier?
I'll make that motion.
But Tim has his hand up, or he had his hand up at least.
Tim, you want to say something?
I was just going to ask, I thought we had crossing guards at Central and Railroad and Church and Railroad. So why do we need additional signage right there?
Well, that's not a question for me. That's a question for Travis or Tina.
I would honestly, I pay attention to TAC as much as I possibly can, but I don't know if Chief Cassidy has more information as a seated member on TAC than I can provide. Obviously, like I said, the process is for them to hear. They've heard quite a few, and the ones that they've put forward to the select board for funding are a fraction of the ones that they've heard, but he's unmuted himself. So,
okay, Chief, you have something you want to chime in here?
I believe this was also content and recommendations that may have come up in either Safe Routes to Schools or the Complete Streets draft priority list.
Yeah, that's mentioned in the comments, yeah.
But does that take into consideration Tim's consideration? Like, is it saying if you have crossing guards, you still need these flashing signs?
Well, with all due respect to the process here, pedestrians use those intersections outside of times when there are crossing guards to support school children. There are other pedestrians that use those intersections for whom we would still want them to be able to safely cross.
So is the issue, I guess it gets back to the question, are people blowing through the stop signs that are currently there? Because, I mean, it's not a very lengthy part where between the time you come off of Central to the first stop sign to the second stop sign. So are people blowing through it? Is that the concern? It just would have been nice, I guess, to have someone come in and talk to us about this so we could have asked some questions.
Well, in their defense, they did come in and talk to us about it. You were not at that meeting though. So
okay, so then I'll abstain. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we did have this discussion with them. So, okay. So Michelle made the motion. Did I have a second for it?
Second.
Okay. Okay. And any further discussion on this?
Hand raised.
Okay. Mr. Alfred, go ahead.
So I am going to I'm trying to figure out the right word here, begrudgingly vote for this, but I would like to see some real sort of forecasting and planning of what TAC thinks it's going to need going forward into the future. Right now, this feels like a very ad hoc process, and maybe that's just the way it's going to be, but it seems like, whether they limit themselves to a certain dollar amount a year, whether we sort of, to me, it seems like, I'm sure there's a process, but it doesn't seem like it's a process that has any kind of real guardrails around it as far as from the town's perspective and what the town actually needs. So
yeah,
I just think that there needs to be more. I know that they've got a process set up and they've got the form online and then hearings and all that kind of stuff. But as far as like an overarching goal and what their desire is and what they're sort of spending, it seems like it's kind of all over the place. So.
Right. Well, from the budget perspective, I would certainly agree. It would be nice to have some constraints. But go ahead, Ben. You wanted to chime in here?
Yeah, just real quick. So I'm not on tax, so I don't know the specifics of this. That's really Tina would be able to answer that question. But in my opinion, I do agree there needs to be a process. But I think part of the challenge here is it's trying to get off the ground and trying to figure out what kinds of needs are out there to be able to discern how the process should work. So I think it needed to kind of do some things and have some things come forward. I do agree there should be a process, and I think we'll be working on building one in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Well, that's great to hear, but I would simply say that, even though it's new, we're still spending real dollars as they learn to get off the ground. So it's
well, yeah, well, it's up to almost 100,000, it's what, $80,000 at this point, the last two town meetings.
So maybe if they needed to get up, figure out what they were doing and get off the ground, it would be better to collect data, figure that out, and then do the request. But anyway, I'm going to vote yes for it. I don't have any, I have a lot of reservations about it, but.
Well, I will say that I have expressed some of my concerns to Tina directly about, and to Chief Stone as the head of the chair of the TAC, about this process and making sure that it's a comprehensive process, right? My concern with a lot of this stuff is that it does cost real money to put up these things, and so we want to make sure that we're not just, it shouldn't be just a reactionary board where somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm upset that people are speeding by my house, so put up signs or put up a crosswalk or put up a flashing beacon, right? There has to be, I know that we have our public safety officials involved, but I also know that they have equal weight and can easily be outvoted, right? So there are two of them on the TAC, and there are, I think, 7 members total. So, I agree that I'd like to see a process that, that prioritizes the safety aspect and gives their opinions more weight, and also on the finance side, look at potentially setting up a budget for that says, okay,
financial projections or something.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Some kind of budget projections. Go ahead, Travis.
I would point out we do have some reports coming through Tier 2 of Complete Streets, also Safe Routes to Schools. So a lot of that planning and that type of information in terms of projections will be available shortly. And I would reiterate what I said before. I think having, bringing these things to the FinCom as we go is going to be important. But, if there's somebody who wants to take point on that, that would be really helpful as well. And then, I think the other important thing to mention, because of the chair's point, when we discuss these, because they are presented to the select board, the conversation has been had previously. If there's votes that are split and it is the public safety staff that is in opposed or in favor of something that is not, goes the other way in a full vote, that's information that the select board has requested. They'd like to know if the public safety staff is in favor, how they voted, regardless of the overall TAC vote. So, it's information that we essentially are recording. And I think, in an instance like this, if it were something where, our police chief and our fire chief were opposed to it, I think that it would be reflected in the way it's presented to you as it would be to the select board. So just important to point out.
And I would just like to nominate one of the new people who will be coming onto the committee as the liaison to TAC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, look, everybody knows my concern. I just don't always believe that signage is necessarily the answer, right? There may be enforcement changes, or there may be other, other ways of dealing with some of these issues rather than just throwing up signs and flashing lights everywhere, right? Anyway,
in a year, we will have spent the 26th officer.
Yeah. So. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. I believe, was it seconded? I keep saying this, but I don't know if somebody did second it. Was seconded, okay. So we can proceed to a vote, and everybody shuffled their position again. So, Mr. Alfred.
Oh, I had to go first on this one?
Yes, yeah, you're now first on my screen.
Wonderful, okay. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Maxwell.
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Zemer.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes. Okay, 36.
35.
Oh, 35. What do we?
No, we do 35.
Oh, no, we did 35. Okay, we did 35. Yeah, 35 was in the first list. So
35 was in your overall list.
yep. So 36. Okay. So this is this one we were in favor of, but Dan wanted to abstain, so we had to vote this separately. So the motion would be favorable action on Article 36.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one? I don't see hands. So Mr. Alfred?
The petitioner, I will abstain.
Okay. Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Zemer?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian? Ms. Nersessian?
Sorry about that. I had an urgent phone call I had to pick up. So are we voting
Okay.
on this one?
This is favorable action on the town email thing.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, and I vote yes. Okay, so that passes. And last,
All right,
and certainly,
to the chair, if I may.
yes, but
The petitioner aware that the motion will be done by the petitioner? You're all set there? If you have any issues on procedure, please contact myself or the town clerk's office, and we will help you.
The petitioner is requesting that the TA write it for him.
no.
I'll take care of the motion.
Yes,
Okay.
take care of the motion. Okay, so
Travis, can I send that to you so it can be in the packet ahead of town meeting, or do you need it?
No, absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so 37 is the expansion. We said there is a financial component to this because this is the $7,550. $7,500 for the special election, $50 in additional stipend, and then obviously the $50 on. Is it? I was trying to think. Is it 50 and 75? What was Article 4? 50 and 75 for select board?
It would be 50 and 50 because I think 75 is for the chair.
Okay, so it's $100. Yeah, I couldn't remember whether it was because it used to be 25 and 50 for a select board. So
I'm not. We would have to ask Liz. 7,500. I think was something that was in her budget for the town elections for this year, but I don't know if that's the final. It would be what the actual incremental cost would be.
right. Well, I think that the question is
The more the reason I think that we recommend that we'll make a recommendation at town meeting.
yeah, I think that's true. Okay, so that'll give us a chance because we'll have to figure out how we're going to fund it, and we'll have to figure out and maybe even we might even it might be worth asking the select board what they wouldn't be committed to this, but what they might do, like would they call an election before July 1, because then it tells us which fiscal year. So I said for 37, I think the motion will be that we make a recommendation at town meeting.
The bylaw would have to pass through AG review, right? And how long does that take? I don't know if you could.
I don't know. Ask Travis.
Yeah, I mean, the review will be relatively quick. I think it's written correctly. But the special election within the amount of days is when we would need an answer back. I would point out here, just like the motion on 36 will be, at the behest of the petitioner. the nature of this article, where nobody is sort of taking credit for it, it is public information of who received the receipt when the information was dropped off at the town clerk's office. If anybody's interested, you can contact the clerk. But otherwise, if nobody steps up to make a motion, or I don't receive a motion ahead of time, I mean, it's possible that this article essentially dies on the floor if nobody stands up to make the motion.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, no, and the 180 days in terms of it, whether it's in FY 21 or 22, is. Well,
I'm just thinking from the financial perspective, right? If the select board were to say, yeah, if this gets approved, we'd try to hold the election sooner rather than later, right? The only reason I say this is because then that we could avail FY 21 monies to fund the election.
But there's no way even if it's a 30-day review, plus then you need papers and you need at least 30.
That's true. Okay. So yeah, so it's FY, good point. With the nomination, everything would take time. So yeah. So, okay. So we're talking FY 22. So that means that, in theory, not that I'm saying we should do this, but we'll have to have this discussion. We'll see.
Does the original petitioner have to provide the motion to you, Travis, or can it be really anyone? And they can do it on the floor as well, can't they?
Somebody's going to need to stand up and make the motion.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be there. Anybody could do that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So for this,
I move that we make a recommendation on the floor of town meeting.
Yep. Make a recommendation at town meeting. Okay, seconded by Sue. Okay, any further discussion? I don't see any hands. Mr. Alford.
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker. Hey, you got to be unmuted. There you go.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
No.
So, okay, Ms. Nersessian.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Maxwell.
Yes.
Ms. Zemer.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so that was 6-1. Now, Mr. Murphy, not that you have to rationalize, but I'm just saying.
I don't want to get into another contest when we make a motion on the floor. So
no, we'll have been posted and been open.
Oh, no. Okay. So you're just thinking we should do something now or something like that, or
yeah. I mean, but that's just
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
I'm
I thought you were
against it because I'm cheap, but.
Okay, that's fine. As I said, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not trying to question your vote. I was trying to understand, given that you said nothing in the debate, whether there was some other reason why you voted no. Okay, so we have recommendations for everything. So last thing we have to deal with.
No, we don't. We have to deal with the two articles, the governance.
9 and 10.
Right. Well, that's you didn't let me finish, right? Last thing
you said everything. So
right. The two governance committee articles and the warrant message. So let's do the governance committee articles first. So this is 9 and 10,
Should
right?
we do 10 first?
Yeah, we can do 10. Okay, so 10. I don't know if people have looked at 10. Travis, if you want to scroll back to 10 or scroll, I would say scroll to the actual changes for 10.
To that point, if everybody's unaware, 9 and 10 within the warrant simply reflect that it is an exhibit B and C. Exhibit A is referencing Article 4, which is the stipend committee report, which is referenced in the comments and will be referenced in the main motion on Article 4. Then you get to Exhibit B, which is, on page 27.
Okay, so let's go. We're doing 10 first. So do the.
So I'll just say I'm not a huge fan of pushing back town meeting. I'm not exactly sure why we're doing that. I also, like how we do capital in the fall more than in the spring. But that said, there's nothing incredibly objectionable to this, in my opinion.
So clarify for me, what dates are we moving back?
They want to delay the spring town meeting to 1 week later. So
I think they said it was an average of 4 or 5 days or something like that, because it's actually like the second Monday or instead of the first Monday or whatever.
Following the first Friday.
And then they want to move the October town meeting up a week. So it would be 1 week earlier to avoid all the things
Halloween
and all that. But we already took care of that in the sense that the current bylaws have the Halloween coverage, but they're just saying
Yeah,
move along, move it out of the way.
Would the election move back as well?
no.
So it'd just be a more compressed time period in between.
Yeah, you'd have 1 week between, basically 1 week between the election,
So-
between the town meeting and the election.
Travis, is that a problem from a practical standpoint of, let's say we had a motion at spring meeting to do a Prop 2.5 override? How does that work?
But you don't do that at town meeting. That has to be approved by the select board well in advance.
No, it's got to be approved by both.
It would
Yeah,
have
you need
approved.
no the town meeting piece of an override, just to be clear, is usually a contingent appropriation of the funds, so that if the override is approved, you know how they're going to be spent, right? Technically, you don't need the town meeting vote to put it on the
I see.
town ballot. So the select board decides what goes on the ballot, so that so they could put it on regardless of what town meeting did. But then if town meeting rejected any contingent appropriation, it then means that if the override were to pass the ballot, you'd have a problem. You wouldn't be able to, you'd have to have another town meeting to appropriate the funds.
See how much power the select board already has?
So, okay, so on 10,
I'm okay with recommending favorable action on 10.
okay, let me just, I'm just trying to put up, so, okay. Yeah, and that just is the notice.
I have a problem with number 11, the way it's written. Town council. The select board shall employ an attorney to act as town council.
Where's
So the
this?
select board is not employing anybody. It's the town that's employing. They can appoint.
Okay, where,
Page 42 of 42.
okay. Okay, it's okay, 42, okay.
And it goes back to,
That's not one that's changing.
I know,
All right, that's current language. Yeah.
but
But that's not what 10 is really is.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
it's 11, but
So, no.
No,
but
Article 10 he's talking about.
Oh.
No, I mean,
no, I know. I'm just pointing out something that popped while reviewing this quickly.
what
They execute the contract with town council. I mean, I think that's what it's trying to say.
Words are specific
what is your objection to it exactly?
because the town council is not employed by the select board. The town council is an employee, works for the town.
Not according to the town council.
Not according to town
Yeah,
council.
I know.
Yes.
I will bring that up later. I just need the meeting he actually said it at. So I can- Okay, whatever.
So the other question I had about this one was all the changes where they add legislative special acts, right, allowed by a general legislative special acts. That's clearly laying the groundwork for the TA statute, right? I mean, they're clearly, when they're talking about special acts, they're talking about the TA statute. So to me, the only problem I have with 10, I'm fine with the times and all that, and I have no issue with that. But I don't like the idea of changing the language to say subject to special acts and then going back and changing those special acts. So to me, that in one sense, they're putting the cart before the horse, which is an argument I certainly would make for Article 9, right? But the, you know, I don't think there's anything in our current special acts that impact any of these, as far as I know. In other words, like they're putting it in there, but you know, it then, as I said, it worries me because it's like the current special act, the TA special act doesn't say anything about this other than the TA is an officer, you know, basically does all these things at the behest of the select board. You know, but I just wonder whether this is a backdoor way to, you know, I'm not really that opposed to this one because I don't think that's a big deal. I'm just kind of pointing out that I don't like the idea of putting in a loophole and then creating something to fill that loophole afterwards, you know? So what do people think about 10?
So I'm kind of, sorry, Ken, I'll wait for you to call me.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So
It's really weird because your hand, the reason I didn't see your hand up was because it blended in with your background.
Oh, sorry. I'm wondering if we should even make a recommendation on this because there's no reference specifically to the finance committee. And I don't see any financial impact from these.
That's true. There really isn't one.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a recommendation on it.
And okay, so why would you like to make a recommendation on it, Dan? I mean, I'm not taking sides of this.
It's a big bylaw
sides.
change. It impacts town meeting and impacts us.
So what's your recommendation? Vote no?
No, I'm going to vote that we recommend favorable action on Article 10.
Okay, so what's the consensus? What are people thinking? Let's hear some thoughts here. Obviously, somebody can second Dan's motion if they want to recommend favorable action. But it sounds like there's some debate needed here. So let's hear opinions from the members.
I'm not opposed to Article 10. It's more just with the accusation that we overstep the bounds of the Finance Committee. I'm just curious if we as a committee should make a recommendation on this.
Well, we're also accused of being the committee of no. So, so sometimes saying yes,
Fair enough.
Well, but I will say this. I'll just say this, right? We should do what we are, elected to do, regardless of the criticism, right? If I listen to the criticism we get, we never have a budget, right? Because everybody's always complaining about the budgets we recommend. So, I'm not in favor of saying, let's just do this because we want to appear to be good, or not, let's not do this because we want to appear to, all right? If we think it's something that impacts either us or the town's finances, we should have an opinion. If not, then we should let it go. Good, Michelle.
There's a major change in number 1 that I think addresses what we do. Excuse me. I mean, it's already been just touched upon, where it says the Springtown meeting shall be primarily concerned with the determination of matters involving the expenditure of town funds, including but not limited to the matters involving adoption of an annual operating budget for all town agencies, the capital improvement program, which right now we do in the fall. So right there is something that isn't an overreach for us. It's a major change from our procedure.
Well, the question is, does that obligate us to do the capital?
It does not.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't read that as saying that requires us to do capital in the spring, because the capital improvement program is the capital improvement program. And if there are changes, I mean,
it does make clear that it's supposed to be that more capital will be allowable in the spring. That it won't just be, things that need to be done over the summer or soon.
Right, but my point is that I think that us voting on this isn't an overreach of our jurisdiction.
I don't think so at all.
I'm convinced, but thank you for your patience.
Okay, so what are people thinking? Yes, no?
Yes. I'll second Dan's motion.
Okay, then any further debate on 10? Okay, then we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, so we have favorable action on 10. Now, 9, I think, I'll start discussion on 9. I think that the changes that are being suggested radically alter the ability of us to do our job, and actually, in essence, changes our job from one of oversight to merely tacit. It diminishes our voice substantially. And the number one reason I feel that way is because it specifies that the budget that gets to town meeting is the select board's budget and not the budget recommended by the finance committee. And that to me is a major, major change that I would never support.
Yeah, can I vote no twice?
Now we only get one vote. That would be overreach to vote no twice.
Tina voted no twice on something.
Well, you can vote not to recommend, and then at town meeting. You can
there you go. That's okay. Yeah, there you go.
That's right. Okay, so I don't know if everybody's read through this, but there are a lot of things. Obviously, we were all here for the meeting with the governance committee where a lot of our concerns were expressed. I don't believe that what they are putting forth is, personally as a resident, in my interests as a taxpayer, because it's removing checks and balances from the process. And just to be clear, I'm not opposed to codifying a budget bylaw, but there are some significant changes. I mean, this is not just saying we're going to solidify a process we've used. This is, we're going to change dramatically the process we've used. Mr. Sparrow, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I'm not trying to rehash my debate with Dan the other day, but which I appreciated his.
Mason versus Holliston. Let's go.
But I just have a question for everyone here. As you look at this Article 9, and in my opinion, as you speak, it sounds like the big concern that people have is Section 2-5, which is basically who presents the town meeting. I know there's another phrasing, and I think it's 2-.
Well, I have other issues as well.
Hold on.
That is one of the biggest issues. Yes.
Let me finish my question here, though. So my question is, if the language of this article did not include that the select board would present the budget to town meeting, are there any other pieces within the language that would cause you to vote no to this article? If that piece was removed, I'm not saying it's going to be removed. I'm just wondering, are there any other pieces that are objectionable enough that you would vote no on it?
I would, and I'll tell you why. Right there are several things there are several hidden gotchas in here. One of them is Section 4.1, where they talk review, where it says subject to any applicable exceptions defined in the so-called Massachusetts Public Records Law. I don't know why it's so called, but anyway, the wording and the original version, I know it's been softened a little since they met with us, but the original version said public information only. This one, mentions facts, figures, records, information, right? What is specifically intended, and I'm no fool, right? What is specifically intended by 4.1 is to prohibit this finance committee from having any knowledge of executive session matters, right? Now, I'm not saying that we have a right to that information, but we should, and I'll give you a perfect example, right? Negotiations for the unions are under different departments, right? Select board has some unions, school committee has others, right? We are in no way part of those negotiations. However, in trying to formulate a budget plan, it makes perfect sense that those negotiating authorities should be, the finance committee should be able to say to them, we'd like you to come to us in executive session and give us an update. Where do we stand? What do we look like? Because when we're trying to, construct a budget, it's important to have some knowledge. Again, we're not in the process, but we should be able to request that information because that's critical. I mean, the value of some of these contracts has a big impact on the budget. So this is clearly intended to preclude that from happening. Okay, so that I wouldn't agree with that. There are other things about the process in general where the process is focused on select board review of the individual department budgets as opposed to finance committee review and things like that. I mean, there's way more here than just that one issue, but that is just a major issue in my mind. But Mr. Murphy, I'll let everybody else have a chance here. So go ahead, Vin.
Yeah, I mean, you're just talking about Article Section 5, but it's really Section 3 is the crux of the whole thing. The budget's got to be approved and selected. The select board shall be responsible for submitting the proposed operating budget to the town meeting, which is totally changing what's happening now and which is under state law right now. So it's not just one thing. And I kept emphasizing that when I was discussing it with other people and saying, no, this is totally changing of the whole process.
Exactly.
And if, I would say let's codify something, but I don't think we need to have a bylaw. I think let's figure out something, have a policy in place, and let's work through it. And if it's not working because our boards don't get along, then we put something in bylaw, but we certainly don't need initially to have a bylaw. We're doing the bylaw solely because the governance committee sees as though it should be the select board's job to be doing this, and it's not. If it's state law to initially, and it's de facto state law to say the finance committee does it, and it's only exceptions to that by having a bylaw, it tells me that the state, in its infinite wisdom, does have some smart things. It should be the finance committee doing it, not the select board. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I said there are many things that I find objectionable in here. And again, it's not, to me, it's yes, obviously I'm intimately involved with this because I'm the chair of the finance committee. But I look at it from a resident's perspective, and I say, you know, when I go to, you know, when I'm not on the finance committee anymore, and I go to the ballot to elect 7 people to be on the finance committee, I'm electing them specifically to do 2 things: to watch out and make sure that the money is being used wisely and in the town, and to recommend to me how they feel the money should be spent. As town meeting, as a resident, I can go to town meeting even when I'm not on the FinCom, and I can vote for or against whatever they recommend, right? But I'm electing them to tell me what they think as my kind of eyes and ears on a more routine basis than I'll have when I'm not on the committee. And I don't believe that the select board has that same responsibility. You elect a select board member for a different purpose. And that's where I have a fundamental issue with this idea that let's change the process from what state law defines as a, you know, I think it's incorrect to say that because we don't have a bylaw, we don't know what to do. We do know what to do. Our bylaws were clearly fashioned around what the state put in the laws, right? It's very clear. That was the intent when the bylaws were written, to follow the template of state law that says that we have certain responsibilities and the select board has certain responsibilities. And this is not, hey, let's just codify something. And by the way, I'll point out for the record, when we met with the governance committee, this is exactly what Ms. Zemer said, right? Was, why can't you just codify what we do now and clean up a few loose ends? And the answer they got was nothing. They literally just didn't answer at all. So, Mr. Whitaker, you wanted to comment as well.
Yes, there's actually a couple things. First off, I enjoyed watching Mr. Alfred's and Mr. Sparrow's thing. I don't know if Tyson Holyfield was quite the right analogy, but close enough.
Didn't bite his ear.
No, that's not,
you're assuming you're Tyson.
that actually happened. That happened in the second one. Anyway, as far as whether or not I'd vote against this, et cetera. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Before I get there, I would say that I do like the idea of having a process actually in writing. As the new guy here, well, I'm not very new anymore. I got a year under my belt almost now. But
hey, time flies when you're having fun.
Is that so much fun? The reality is that every night was kind of a surprise for me for this last year because I didn't know what to expect. So having that kind of a budget process in writing, I don't think is a bad thing. However, I don't know if this is the best way to do it. And what I'd actually potentially vote no for, or one of the things that's really pushing me towards a no, is not what's actually written, but what's not written. And that what's not written is the entire section about the Special Act of 1994 and how that needs to also change with any of this stuff. So what to me, we're kind of affecting only one half of the equation, and we're going to unbalance the equation completely. So it's problematic to me just because of that. Never mind, like what else might actually be going on. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Travis is a good guy and would step it up and take care of business anyway. But it would be, if we're going to get into the law, we're going to truly try to make a bylaw out of this. Let's go the whole way. Don't stop with just half.
So let me just say this, and I'm not doing this because I want to shunt debate. I'm saying this because it's 10 o'clock and we've been meeting for 3 hours except for the 5-minute break. Is the consensus of the committee to vote no on this?
Yes.
Yes.
From
Okay.
me.
Is that yes or no? Just kidding. Okay. So I don't think we need to have a 20-minute debate if we all agree that we're voting no on this. But go ahead, Michelle.
I just want to say one of my concerns is the amount of misinformation that's out there, saying what this warrant article will fix when, one, it's not broken, and two, that the issues aren't related to the warrant article, you know, saying something like it'll increase our bond rating when this has nothing to do with our bond rating. You know, I've read the report. This isn't going to diversify our tax base. You know, this isn't going to do what the report said we need to do to increase our bond rating. You know, it's the misinformation is what is bothering me possibly more than anything else.
Fake news.
Yeah, it is. It's fake news. And I think that does more harm. You know, if you're going to I haven't watched your debate yet. I'm sure the debate was truthful, but I think what does more harm to both sides is when misinformation is traded.
Okay, well, first of all, watch the debate. I'm saddened that you haven't watched the debate.
I have to make popcorn. I have to sit down and make popcorn.
Well, it got really good when Ben got up and started smashing the furniture, and Dan started throwing punches. And,
did he have his guitar?
Right, that's right.
Smashing the Les Paul.
Right. But, okay, so as I said, in the interest of time, if it seems like there's a recommendation for unfavorable action on Article 9, is that somebody want to make that motion?
Yes, I want to make the motion.
Okay, do I have a second? Do you second that, Dan?
Second.
Okay. Okay, any further debate on that? Ms. Ziemer?
Aye.
Mr. Alfred?
We're voting aye, right?
We're voting aye. The motion is to recommend unfavorable action on Article 9.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian?
Yep.
Okay, and obviously I vote yes on that as well. So, okay, so with that, we have now completed everything we need to on the warrant recommendations. Last action of the night, hopefully, is the warrant message. Now, I sent out a draft, and then I sent out a slightly tweaked, updated draft. I don't know if people have major changes. Let me make sure I have it here so I can make the, actually I do have it already up, okay. So, again, if anybody has changes, just start raising your hand and tell me what you want to change, and we'll discuss them. And once we finish this, we're done for the evening. So,
okay. Got everyone's middle initial in there, so we're good there.
Yes. Well, I kept it from. The good thing was because we didn't have a new member this time, I just kept the same, block at the bottom that we had last time. So. Okay, did anybody have anything? There were a couple of minor tweaks, as I said, very minor wording changes that I made from the first to second draft, just based on some individual feedback. But if everybody's good with what's there, then I will entertain a motion to approve the warrant message for inclusion in the Finance Committee report.
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that?
You'll also do your PowerPoint as well, so that if we have things that we want to make sure you get included, you can do that there.
Yes, I will. After the focus this week for me as the chair is once I get the warrant message approved and we've got all the votes we did tonight, I have to get that all into a Finance Committee report. Travis obviously is a big help there. And Travis and I have already been talking about all the schedules and everything else. We've got it already partitioned and most of it done. So once I get everything that we've done tonight, all the votes we did tonight taken care of and the message taken care of. I'm going to spend the next couple of days assembling the report, getting it to Travis, doing our final, check to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And that will be published this Friday. And then we'll meet next Tuesday as our typical Q&A if anybody wants to come in and ask us questions about the report. But yes, I'll start working on the presentation after that. So.
And just make sure you include on there on our the posting, a discussion about the budget if there is any late breaking news from either.
Yeah, I always put something. I don't just put Q&A. I usually put updates to any recommendations based on new financial information that becomes available or whatever. So yes, I will have something to that effect on there.
So since it will be May, are there going to be any line item transfers we're seeing?
That's a question for Travis. Usually we don't start seeing that till June, right? Because we got to get closer to the end of the fiscal year before they figure out they're going to need their $50.
Yeah. So the ones that we have in here, the known ones, right? So I don't think we were going to be able to cobble together enough to cover snow and ice. So we put the reserve on there. The
Okay.
water one was from retained earnings if we don't need it, which I think we may be able to cover. It'll just go back. Anything else for line item transfers, right now we're projecting to be able to be covered within the budget, which would be our normal process and don't require to be put on the report.
Okay, just those two. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? We have the motion on the floor is to approve the warrant message as distributed.
Was it seconded?
I think,
Yeah.
Yes, I second.
I think it was seconded. Yes. Okay. So Ms. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
and I vote yes. I always like my own message. So okay, so that's it from the warrant report prep point of view. We've now done everything we need to do to get the report out. Of course, for me, the work is just starting because I will now spend the next 2 days putting all this into the report. But for my zero stipend non-working job, no, just kidding.
Such a mensch.
But anyway, so that's all we really needed to take care of tonight in terms of the things we absolutely had to take care of. I don't believe, Travis, do you have anything else FY22 wise? Okay. So we're good on that. If nobody else, and I'm guessing that after 3 hours, everybody's probably ready to go. So I will entertain the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Alfred,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Yes.
Mr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Nersessian,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That concludes the Tuesday, April 27th meeting of the Finance Committee. Thank you for joining us again this evening. As I mentioned earlier, our report will be out our report for the Maytown meeting will be out on this Friday, April 30th, I believe. And we will be meeting in the coming week before town meeting to continue any last minute prep for town meeting. But for tonight, we're done. So thank you for staying with us, but thank you and good night.